Chris, is Mark still into the picture? Oh, he's still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
He gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus, he does something!
Looking for a second, he connects in. Oh, and he gets a third as well. Surely he's not going to pull this off. Oh, Caldera, the man, the myth, the beast.
Zaiwu, no help really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got 3. And 5. And oh my God, Zaiwu! Unbelievable!
Hey up, everybody. Welcome to the last episode of Revenge of By the Numbers, the final episode of this iteration of the show. And, well, what better way to kick it off than to start talking about the Major? Because, of course, this is going to be essentially a show that's entirely focused on the Major. We have so much to talk about.
And it was the last CSGO Major.
So, it was the last CSGO Major. So you see, synchronicity. It all just comes together. It all just fits right together, nice and neat. How you doing, Thorin?
Basically, after the way that Major went, seeing like the last images, like Jake Lucky, that shit trophy, all the like interviews again. What did your mum say to you when you were? Don't lift that trophy yet. What was she saying? What did you start for dinner like that? At that point, I just thought, you know what? Shut it down. Like Counter-Strike's over. We're over.
Well,
look,
I mean, we might as well. We could just go ahead and start talking about that right off the bat, because that is actually one of those things where throughout the Major, I was wondering who was producing the show. And if it was actually the producer that has produced Blast this entire time, Smil, or if it's Smid, or if it's somebody else, because I'm just the lack of flow in the segments was really jarring, and I'm just sitting here going, this isn't usually how it goes. Usually it's a pretty smooth kind of thing. They usually have a pretty good grip on how to run a smooth show and how to orchestrate, because you have to think of it like a symphony or something, right? When you're producing a show, especially a stage show, you have to be thinking about how you're going to build up the emotion in the arena and how get everybody pumped up, and you're going to show that cool like highlight reel of everything that you wanted to the whole, well, we could talk about that, of course, but you have your high moments that you keep bringing everybody up to this peak of energy, and every single time it felt like Blast just kept dropping the ball and saying, "Oh, we're going to bring you all the way up here, and then we're going to just drop it completely and not announce a team and not announce no. We'll bring Banks out onto the stage now to kind of warm up the crowd a little bit, to like interact with the crowd a little bit, and then to shout really loud into the screen, and then we'll bring the teams out." It just felt like it was just completely jarring the entire time. And they never really, what shocks me is that after the first time that you do that, right, where you may notice that, okay, it doesn't quite work. You would maybe pivot, make a change up the run of show, maybe bring the teams out first. And then, once the teams are out and introduced, then you bring James Banks out to I don't know, warm up the crowd a little bit while the players are getting set up. There's a little bit of downtime there. Cameras are moving around. Maybe you bring James out then to kick it off. I don't know. Because there is going to be that drop off as the teams, do their walkout and then walk back to the stage and start getting set up. There's a little bit of a lull in the energy there before you're actually live in the game. I would think that's where you bring James out and actually start having him interact, or maybe a quick, pre-match interview, something like that. But it just felt very jarring the entire time. Like they kept fucking up that whole sequence, and it was really surprising to me considering the experience in that production room at Blast. This isn't their first rodeo. I mean, they usually knock it out of the park when they run their event in the Royal Arena in Copenhagen.
Did I call it though, or did I call it, mate? I did tell everyone before the Major, you can go watch that 4 Horsemen episode. They've never run a tournament with more than 8 teams, as far as I know, and it fucking showed Semmler. And about half their events are in their home arena that they've been in since 2017. When they were in an unknown arena, which quite frankly, this is what looked even worse about this Major, is that arena looked almost identical in layout to the Lanxess, the legendary ESL 1 Cologne home, where ESL has probably done the best Counter-Strike tournaments ever, where they nailed the production. So first of all, that mythical Blast production, which used to be awesome, especially in the online era, and with all the small amount of teams in the Royal Arena, a lot of that just didn't make it, like we're talking about. Like, even beyond just the stage setup. Mate, one thing, look, ESL's also terrible for this. They were just as bad at IM Rio. But it is unbelievable, this thing where producers, I used to think they were fucking up, which is why I would rage tweet. I've realized now this is actually the protocol. In Counter-Strike, when you run the bomb site as the tease, you have a protocol like he looks here, I look here, the smoker comes in, I flash, your anti-flash position. Like that in production. I can tell now it's the actual conscious decision that the second the last player dies, you cut away from the action to the player's face or the crowd or someone in the crowd with a sign. That includes, and this is a cardinal sin, but ESL does it as well, but they were terrible at Blasted did it every time. They would cut away unquestionable diffusers from the CT, where there's only a CT left. He's diffusing the bomb, and on the timer, because we don't have the actual amount of seconds, we don't know, is that 4.5 seconds or is it 3.9 and he's actually going to fail even though he has a kit? And instead of having the tension, we would see a fan's face and then it would cut back like, oh, he won the round. And there was a couple, I'm not joking, where he didn't win the round. And you didn't see the bomb explode and them lose the round. If you're a casual fan, by the way, you essentially, hopefully the casters said it, you just came in the next round like, why haven't they got guns? What the fuck? He just won the round. That's mental. Because here's the problem with that. You have a million times in a Counter-Strike game you can cut to the crowd. For a start off, timeouts themselves are perfect for it. Then you have all the rounds where it's just a normal death at the end and you can cut away. They not only did it on the diffusers, they also did it on weapon saves where someone's come in with the terrorist, there's no time left, the CT peaks and they cut to the crowd. And sometimes they lost the gun. So they essentially just told them, like, either you know nothing about Counter-Strike or forget you know anything about Counter-Strike. Always cut, no matter what, to the crowd. Now, this is the thing we've talked about in the past with ESL. It's just filleting the fucking live audience. Now, I don't know if their logic is by showing the live audience and how sick it is, you'd want to buy tickets. That seems like a bit of a reach because I've always said, why would you cater to the 15,000 people in the venue if like 1.5 million are watching online? Like, you're on the online broadcast. Like the thing you said about banks, by the way, I'll give you a little bit of secret sauce if you don't know the industry, guys. You could have banks do all that while the analyst desk's going on the stream and we don't know about it. That's just a hype man for the arena. That's fine. What he's talking about is some of the stuff you do in person is shit on camera. It's actually a concept, by the way, for my favorite genre of music in electronic music, drum and bass. If you ever go to a drum and bass night and you're drinking alcohol and dancing, you're in the floor, those MCs who just like spit a bunch of shit bars and say, get up, hype man, everyone go, drop the next one, rewind. That's sick in person. It gets the fucking crowd going. You don't have crowd mics on the mixes, you know. You hear everyone going, he's getting everyone revved up, you know, like to switch up to the next song. The big, if you ever hear that when they record it and you're just at home listening on headphones, you're like listening to awesome music and it's like, yo man, what the fuck? You're like, shut the fuck, get it. Is there like a fucking track I can turn off? Get this cunt off. He's ruining all the music. This is the best music ever mixed all together. And this fucking guy's talking over the top, doing like nursery rhyme level floors, like bow, selector, and a go, and a connection. Like, what are you talking about? And you've heard that shit in like the last mix he did. So basically, I think they kept blurring the lines between the crowd and the fucking live broadcast. And I also just think like, they just, you know, when we always used to say ever since 2020, that take that was the contrarian take, but the most popular take in Counter-Strike was like, I think Blast should get a major. You know what? Rewind, come out of a pot and punch yourself in the face. You fucking idiot. Blast should never have had a major. They had no business having this major. I'll even throw this out there. I think the only reason they had the major is because I looked, you remember on the broadcast on our watch party, I looked up, what is the name of this stadium? And it's just owned by the Council of Paris. Not even a company, just Paris itself. So if you don't know, between Macron and that, I'm almost certain they just got it for free or like pennies on the dollar. And that's why they did the event here. Like, this was actually whack. Like, what I dreamed of with a Blast major is it would be in Copenhagen, in the Royal Arena. You'd have all the shit. By the way, another thing on Blast was you'd have all this shoulder content. Blast only does comedy shoulder content or generic shoulder content. Like, they don't even do funny skits. I'll even give ESL that. Like, Blast just does silly stuff like, we guessed the player from just his name or something. Like, this is like little kid shit. Like, this is the last major. Where's the epic shit? Where's the like stuff about like where's like the feature about how Nico hasn't won the major yet? Where's the feature about what does it mean for Carrigan if he ends on 2 when Glaive isn't even there? What does it mean if fucking Navi fixes everything and win with NP? You know what I mean? You didn't get any of this shit if you watched the broadcast. So I was so underwhelmed, mate. Like, we can get to the matches. They had, as usual, like a face at London. They had unfortunate luck with who beat who and the little teams going through and having no big names. That, you can't control that. You aren't Valve. But the part of the production, that is your world. I'll tell you one thing about Flashpoint 2, Semmler. We had the shittest teams you can imagine relative to the top events, considering we were giving away $1 million. But we fucking killed the production, especially our part. All the content, the shoulder content. We had funny stuff, but we also had like legit stuff, real analysis, telestrator segments. We had it all. Like, I was so underwhelmed, and especially in the context, it's the last CSGO major. Like, what a whack way to end. And with the end on Jake Lucky on fucking stream. I'm out.
what I was wondering about it is how much, because when it comes to creating shoulder content, right, this is the justification that it comes down to with tournament organizers is, okay, what's our return on investment for spending money on this content, and is there a return on investment? And some TOs literally look at it like that, as in, what are we getting out of producing this content? Does it add to the show? Is there any kind of monetary return? Like, what's the deal? And if that balances out, if it doesn't balance it out where it's worthwhile for them to do that content, where they don't think it's worthwhile to do that content, they just won't do it. Which is why at the very beginning with these majors, it was Valve who were footing the bill to fly the producers out, fly the cameramen out, and actually produce these kinds of one-on-one interviews, right? These documentaries, these mini docs on the players that were competing in that major, right? Get right, whatever. And then Face It picked up the ball on and did that as well with Newman. I think he was the one who was out there doing like the Stewie one and all of that, you know. But then it never really continued. It dropped off, and we never had anybody who actually continued to push that forward and say, no, this is a necessity. Because what I think has happened is that the major now has just become like any other tournament. And so you have the TOs that are bidding to get these majors. And at some point it shifted over from it being, or at least this is how I always perceive the major. And this is how us commentators always try to perceive the major and try to push when it came to a major, is that we put petty politics aside between TOs and between casters and between all of that. We put it all aside because the major is about Counter-Strike as a whole, the whole scene, the whole history, the legacy, everything. It all comes together. You push all the bullshit aside and you make the major a celebration of Counter-Strike in general. Like, it's supposed to be just this independent event that's just there to celebrate Counter-Strike. And what I think has happened, or what I feel like has happened, at least over the past several years now, is that more and more the major has shifted away from that independent event that's just supposed to be like a World Cup kind of thing to just being another tournament that is run by that TO in particular. It's just another PGL event. It's just and in this case, it's just another Blast event. Like you say, there's nothing to differentiate it from a regular Blast event. Like, when throughout this entire major, they could have been running it out of the Royal Arena, and they could have called it a Blast Fall Final for all I know, because as far as the major is concerned, yeah. I didn't see any shoulder content. I didn't see anything that made it see, okay, this is a major, apart from that one little compilation, just one compilation where it's just like, you know, I started playing Counter-Strike because my brother played it, you know, like, that's the best they can do out of fucking 10 years plus of CSGO history. All of these amazing moments that have happened throughout Counter-Strike that have built this huge storyline that's spanned a decade. Valve have made billions of dollars off of this fucking game. Everybody's made money off of this game. Like, you could have done so much epic content, and you had the time to do it. You had months of lead up to this tournament to do all sorts of cool content around the CSGO and building this huge storyline, this huge celebration. And instead what we got was individual, like, sponsored content by booze companies for commentators, which, you know, fine, fair enough. I mean, we've talked about trying to get more representation for commentators, or at least more promotion for commentators, for years now. So it's just so funny that it's at the major that, you know, finally, you know, oh, you know, behind the scenes with Moses, you know, actually doing some kind of content around the commentators. The only problem is it's the major. Like, you can't be doing, it's not about the commentators, it's about the players, it's about the game. The commentators are a part of that, but literally almost all of your shoulder content was just about the commentators. So this whole thing, and then the other one is obviously like, oh, look at this trophy that we made. Let me go ahead and wank off on, you know, in this shoulder content piece about how we're so innovative, 3D printing, and then spray painting, and then lacquering our little dinky trophy, right? So
remember, they didn't just even play that once or twice. That was being played, like, I think I saw it about 5 times. It's played in the final, mate. They were playing it all. Yeah, they played it all the time as a thing. The other thing is what you said earlier there, right? First of all, there's no point in running esports if it is only for the sake of finance, right? Spoiler, there's way better ways to make money in the fucking world. Like, that cannot be the whole point. In theory, when you create something visual, it's art. You are trying to create an experience. So one reason you would do it is to, I don't know, reach for excellence. Like, by that logic, then people would go, if you're the best player in the world, stop practicing, mate. Just try and stay the best player in the world, but don't try and go for like the greatest of all time. Yeah, just be the best. Just play down to the level of your competition. No, what you're trying to do is exceed, transcend your competition. So should be the same with broadcast, in my opinion. The reason why you do awesome content is so that ESL goes, fuck, we better get our shit together. We look like idiots compared to these guys.
Well, how did ESL start doing skits? It's because Flashpoint came around. We started doing skits. They saw how the community were appreciating the skits, and they were like, "Oh, we should do that too." I mean,
Well, this is
that's
also
always
why
been
I
said.
know that like it's absolutely just bad business by Blast. Blast doesn't know how to sell sponsorships. There you go. I said it. That's why they need to take like potentially genocidal sponsorships like Neon fucking 3 years ago. Because I can tell you right now, I know why we had our own little Valve type fucking profiles on players at Flashpoint 2, not even a big competition. We had a sponsor that was a direct deliverable for the sponsor. We tied it in, we sold them. We will go, we'll make these documentaries, and then when people love them, they're going to see your name and will associate that with your brand, that you're cool enough to sponsor it. By the way, you take a sponsor of your tournament, headset sponsor, video card, and you make it something like, you know, the fucking sound of Counter-Strike, like the vision to be a great player, and that's like Ziwu, fucking Nico, simple. You sell it to the sponsor. So at the end of the day, people who do production, people who do tournaments, you have to have someone who's as competent at business who can sell these. And I can tell you right now, this company, Last Free Nation, has sold sponsorships and deliverables like that. So if we could do it, you can't do it as a giant TO with 1.5 million views for a fucking match. So I just find that whack. And also, like I say, especially because it's the last CSGO major, the last one, you had to nail the shoulder content. You had to make something, by the way, iconic that, like, let's say someone in a few years just stops watching CS. They'll always be able to go back and say, oh, this was how it like ended. This is like the capstone to the narrative. You didn't get any of that. Like the Joker, Ziwu did win on home soil in France. And was there really even anything about that? What the fuck was this tournament, you know?
No, just like the
How'd you miss that?
the analysis, the analysis desk bringing it up every now and again.
Yeah,
but that was about the extent of it, right? Which I guess is, I mean, I guess that's the stopgap, right? And that's the way to get around it. If you're Blast, it's like, oh, well, we'll just count on the talent to tell that story over and over again. We don't need to do anything extra. And
oh, by the way, we should definitely talk about the fact that when we were going through all the problems before the major, some of the talent ones bore fruit. Like, what a terrible decision to hire Dinko, who I think's an all right caster, as a fucking interviewer and do exit interviews. It's not, by the way, that he's an idiot. I can tell he was even trying to actually overreact to like people criticizing him before. He just isn't a good interviewer.
Him and Banks
it's a
both,
fucking
yeah.
skill set, you wankers. I spent years and years getting good at interviews. You're just going to fucking put a mic in front of someone who talks and go, there you go, interview them. How the fuck would he? It's a different type of talking. You actually have to be able to like read the other person, know who they are, maybe even pre-interview them and talk about what the topics are, carefully guide your way into this stuff. Like, instead, he was doing a lot of, it's just because he's inexperienced, a lot of like quite wasn't very tactful, put it that way. He would fail sometimes. And remember, that could have been Heku, who not only knows the players, has done all the homework, she can fucking speak Russian and like Latvian, like, by the way, that even applies here. There's Latvian fucking players in Counter-Strike. She can speak a whole bunch of different languages, and she just has the vibe where she can sort of like softly, she has the feminine touch where it's sort of like the nurturing angle. Oh, you just went out the tournament. I understand it's tough, but what do you think of this? The other guy as well that they're loving, the American guy who's like Danish somehow, like Mads or Massive or whatever the fuck. All he did, mate, was just fucking just like, it's like he just wanted a certain answer. Like, I'm sure he asked Nico about 5 times in a row. Like, Nico, he just lost the last major. Yeah, it's really bad. Now you're never going to win a major in CSGO. Yeah. So what would it mean that at the end you've never, fuck it. What do you want me to do? Please, blood. Please, you want blood? Like in video game, Twitch, Minecraft, whatever.
Okay, before we start talking about the talent side of things, I do want to actually, there was like one point that I was thinking about as well, which is that in the last few majors, I think another reason why we've seen a drop off in this kind of content is just bandwidth. And so what I mean by that is the last few majors that we've had, it's PGL, who is a white label company that essentially just runs tournaments for anybody and everybody under the sun. And so they're overstretched at all times because they're running 3 or 4 different tournaments at the same time. Their crews are working multiple tournaments at the same time. They're just completely overworked in this company. And so for them to have any bandwidth to be able to do this kind of shoulder content in-house is just not going to happen. And clearly they don't have the bandwidth, or they don't have the wherewithal, the connections, the desire, the budget, whatever it is, to outsource it to a different company to handle that sort of content for them. They just don't see the value in it. And I think the same thing happened here with Blast, where it almost flew under the radar, but Blast were running Rainbow Six. They're running a bunch of other tournaments at the same time as they are getting ready and executing the major itself. And so again, this comes down to, well, Blast is not a huge company. They're based out of Copenhagen. It costs a lot of money to run, to pay people and to run stuff out of Copenhagen. It's not a cheap place to operate. And so they are not a very big company. And so it makes me think that going into this, another reason why we weren't getting this kind of additional work that would, this cream on top of the cake, we just got the cake. And if even that, it was like a flat cake. But like, we weren't getting any of the frosting and the sprinkles and all that sort of stuff because I don't think that they had the bandwidth to do it. I don't think that they had they had the manpower to get out there and actually do it because they're working on 3 other projects at the same time that are also large projects and that are demanding. And so instead of doing the extra and having the bandwidth to do the extra, the way that pains me to say ESL would be in the position to be able to do that sort of thing. They didn't. They fell flat on that, and I think that's probably a big reason why we didn't see it. I mean, the obvious one is you're always going to come back and say, well, then if you're going to make a lot of money off of stickers, if you're going to get support from Valve, you could even market it to Valve and say like, hey, Valve, listen, this is the last major. You could try and make a point like that, like you say, where instead of trying to find a sponsor, you just go to Valve and try to justify it to Valve, because Valve are very much in that line where it's just like, listen, if you can justify it, we'd be interested in perhaps helping you, subsidizing that, right? And so did they not even try to go to Valve and say like, hey, Valve, listen, we just need a little bit extra budget here to hire some film crews to go around and do this extra content, some editing guys, to go back and find old footage. Like, we think this is going to be a really good thing that'll add a lot to the broadcast. Are you guys interested in subsidizing this or providing additional financial support? Because everybody knows now that at a major, you're making money hand over fist. The sticker money alone for the players is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. These guys are making amazing money off of that alone. And so, yes, there's cost involved, but like you say, they went to Paris. They're not in Paris randomly. They are absolutely in Paris because they are getting wildly subsidized by the Paris government, by the French government, the Paris government, whatever you want to say. They are 100% getting massive subsidies in order to be there to promote esports in Paris, because Lord knows they need any reason under the sun to try and get people to go to Paris, because nobody wants to go to Paris anymore. So they absolutely are saving money on that front. They're probably saving money on the talent side of things, because again, talk about a major, talk about a massive negotiating chip that you can have, where you can go to the talent and say, hey, listen, I know what your day rate is. Do you mind doing this? This is the major, we're a little tight on budget. This, you don't want to miss out on the major. It's a huge downward pressure that you can apply on the talent as well to save money there on their day rate, and say, hey, can you do us a solid and maybe give us a discount on this one, because it is the major after all, and you don't want to miss the major, right? If you're negotiating, and I say that because that's exactly how TOs behave. When it comes to negotiating around majors, they try to pull out every trick under the book to lower your rate, to save money. And so so it just makes me wonder, like, why there's ways for them to have had the budget to do this kind of additional work. So why was the additional work not done? That's still just the main question for me. Like, why didn't they go out and actually create the documentaries, create the shoulder content, make the edits? You could have just done, we could have just had fucking sick edits going back through 10 years worth of CS history. Do you think ESL are going to hold that footage back from Blast? Do you think Star Series or MLG or anybody going to hold that footage back if Blast asks or if Valve asks? Fuck no. They're going to say, okay, fine. Here's access to the footage. We even saw that in the one edit that they did, where it was like, my brother, whatever. We even saw footage there. So clearly they had access to footage. So how is it that they're not hiring some guys to go out and, some frag reel guys, you're reaching out to the YouTube frag channels or whatever and just say like, hey guys, we know that you guys are good at editing. We know that you guys have a lot of, really hot clips from all throughout the years. Do you want, can we pay you to make us an edit for the major? Why didn't any of that happen? That's what I'm curious about going out of this one, because again, it just feels like I watched a Blast Fall Finals. It doesn't feel like I watched a major from a production point of view.
The answer to me is obvious. It's either at best they're noobs, which can't be true, because people like Nicholas Estrop have been on esports as like source. Or two, they don't care. I just think they don't care. If people don't know, I'll just say it straight up. I think a lot of what ESL has done that you have liked in the last 5 to 6 years was a direct response to my complaining, or when I used to work with them, I used to just tell them behind the scenes, like, I think you should do this. I think you should change to a double info. I'd tell them all sorts of shit. I told them you do shoulder content, do skits. You got to change up the fucking world rankings, the seeding. It's not just people like me, people like Tommy, people like Richard, people who've had influence over the community. Like, we're the people who spur a lot of that on. I think if you leave these TOs, they would all be like PGL, mate, and just do the bare minimum and just do the tournament. No, and essentially hope the games carry the tournament. But I've always had the opposite philosophy from production. Like I said, you can't control the games. The one thing you can control is the production and how you tell the stories.
Well, you're literally paying guys. Like, these guys are, their whole job is to tell those stories, right? So is it them that are dropping the ball then? Knowing the producer, again, I do actually eventually just have to send a message and be like, yeah, who actually produced this show, instead of just assuming every time. But he is the guy who's responsible for most of Blast content on CSGO's side of things since the beginning. So I'd be amazed if it wasn't him running this. So, I mean, knowing him, he does care. He does want to put on a good show.
Yeah, but
so
they never even had that shoulder content on Blast, Semmler. Like, that's it.
What
They used to have
happened?
the fun stuff. They had the surfing and the silly, like, 1v1s and that. But, like, for example, they never did, like, a documentary about, like, when Cadian and Astralis had the beef at the Fall Fight. They never did any of that shit. They never used to make actual narrative content. I don't get it myself. Like, I think it's insane, by the way. They never used to make that for the World Finals every year. Like, tell the fucking story of the teams that made it there, you moron. But they just didn't do it as far as I can tell. I just don't think they vibe with it. I actually think, in general, it's a bigger point about esports, Summer. They're not doing this very often in the league either. They might do like 1 or 2 pieces, and that's like a way bigger game. I think the real problem is this, and look, I am, guys, not just complaining. I am taking it into my own hands. I just have to do it myself, Semmler. It has to be me that does it, or it has to be Last Free Nation. And you know what? When the next major happens, so it'll be in CS2 in spring of next year, I'll just be doing it myself. I'll just do it with my company, all the shoulder content, and I'll just get all the hits from our sponsors and make money. And then they can just fuck off. No problem.
I mean, speaking of matches and viewership carrying at the end of the day, I mean, man, they really did get kicked in the nuts, didn't they? I'm actually shocked at how many people tuned in for Vitality versus Gamer Legion. That is the 3rd highest ranked match watched out of the majors in the most popular matches of CSGO major tournaments. It ranks behind G2 versus Navi, which was just freaking stellar, 2.75 million. FaZe versus Navi was a PGO major. Or yeah, PGO major Stockholm was that one. And then we have FaZe versus Navi and PGO Antwerp. 2.11 million, and then Vitality versus Gamer Legion actually got 1.53. So I mean,
there's also the fact that, like, over the years, the online era, remember, we started hitting new peaks. It went free to play as a game. I think essentially people don't know this because they were too distracted by Valorant, which didn't at all affect CSGO viewership. It's only gone up. Like, we're actually succeeded as a game. By the way, games in LCS and NA went down, by the way, even though overall league viewership is very high. No, there's an angle even on that I think so whack, which is when you look at the top 5 matches in this tournament, Lurpus was so fucking right, Tommy, on Twitter, about how idiotic fans are, because he explained that you have to get the big matches with the big teams on at a time that is the best for as many regions as possible. So ideally, you want it to be like later in the evening of European time, probably the last match, so that you get like European viewers and some NA viewers. Whereas like they were doing matches, 2 of the best matches from what I remember, FaZe Heroic was the first match of the quarters, and then the Navi versus FaZe one, which at the time was the big banger of the fucking tournament, that was the first one. These were 11:30 a.m. games. European time. So that means if you're on the West Coast, it's 2 a.m. If you're on the East Coast, it's even less viewable. It's like fucking 5 a.m. No one's going to watch that on a Friday, on a Thursday, on a Wednesday. Like, you didn't even give yourself a chance. And when, by the way, you see in your tournament, G2's going out, shit, Furious just gone out, what the fuck's going on? When you see that the big Versus Pro's not even here, when you see that the big names aren't going through, that you've got to maximize your viewership then. You've got to get cynical. You know this. They do this with talent, dude. They don't just make the fucking schedule before the event, guys, and then go, oh, sorry, Anderson Semmler, when you were the best casters in the world. You got the semi, that's the really shit one with the, like, all right team and a bad team. You didn't get the banger. No, they would literally plan it like, right, the best match is like, this person does this. Like, Henry and Ding, you do the final. That is actually how you're supposed to plan it.
Yeah. It didn't really work out for us towards the end there, man. We got fucked. We missed out on every big
got unlucky. But you know what I mean? That is ideally the way you do it. So I've always said to talent, you know this, when I was in green rooms, I said, I don't want to hear anyone argue about who should do the match. You let the TO decide, because ideally they want them to do that. Put the best talent they think on the best match and pump the viewership. Everyone wins if you do that. It's a team sport. It's like wrestling. Even if you're the one that's the heel, you're there to put the hero over, the baby face. Well, we're all at the end of the day trying to make the show succeed, right?
Yeah, and again, this comes down to production. That is bang on the point that you said, though, right there, is that, and that's been the perspective that Anders and I had since the beginning, which was always put the bet, like, it's the producer's call, and whatever the producer says, that's why what the fiasco at PGL Stockholm, where people were complaining about, which match and what they were going to do. I mean, the rule that we always operated under throughout all those years was whatever the production says is final. It's their show. We're here.
People think I'm a diva, Semmler. I have never, ever complained in my life about what match they put me on. Look, let's be real. I was box office. I was on nearly all the finals. But there'd be a certain time I'd be on the shit semi. And there's times I wasn't on the final. I think it was a start. I didn't do the final. I've never complained publicly or privately ever about that. Because again, as you say, essentially, especially if they made a good decision, like say they put Yamko instead of me, dude, it might have killed it. Maybe I wouldn't have been as good. Spoiler, I would have been better, but it's just me. I'm at least gracious enough to allow them to have their own decision.
Of course, but that's the way that that's what takes the sting out of it, because you can obviously say, I mean, nobody's competing to be casting at that level, to be working on the broadcast at that level and not thinking that they're the best. Okay, so just to get that out of the way. That's why it's the producer that steps in. That's why it's the producer or the director or the TO, whoever. It has to come from them who decides what happens on the show.
I have a question about that.
Their
Though.
show.
You've just spurred me to ask. So I'm just going to ask you straight up now, Semmler. Did you ever, after you finished doing the final of a major, did you ever turn to Anders, tears in your eyes, hug him, embrace him, and be like, "We made it, baby, we made it," like the end of Jerry Maguire or something? You had me at hello. Did you ever do that? I just wonder. I wasn't there. I was in the Alice desk. What were you doing? Did that ever happen? Just wondered.
No, I don't think. Usually, what happened was I want to say like a firm handshake, like a job well done.
Yeah.
You know, we fucking knocked it out of the park. There we go. Now let's go get a drink. That's pretty much. No, never. That's
same on the desk, mate. What would happen is when it would finish, me and fucking Yanko or Moses or Sean we would just do the fist bump like we fucking killed this shit. Let's get out of this bitch. Like even though, listen, I do actually appreciate part of why Launders and Scrawny did that. It's because obviously like they have come from nothing. By the way, they also gambled on themselves a bunch of times. When I told Launders, mate, you're boring as fuck. No one's gonna want to listen to you on a broadcast. Get on the desk. Scrawny, I would have told him just get someone else. Like when Moses and all broke, I would have said go get Moses, mate. Like try and make the best deal with them. So fair enough, they doubled down, they stuck with it. This is Blast, and again, it's their home. I'm not flaming at all that. I'm just saying I thought it was funny. That's why I told that story on Twitter to be naughty, where I was like, you know, obviously everyone's going on and on about, you know, Scrawny and Launders like embracing having that emotional moment, but like, I don't even think it's that unique or unusual. And then I said the story where I said, I remember after we did the Atlanta major, when Astralis won, turning to Moses and in a really earnest way that only men can really deeply express to each other, saying like, lol, you just got fucking wrecked, didn't you? And then basically, you know, because the joke is like, that just isn't my style, is it? I wouldn't do that in that scenario, would I? Come on.
No, but this is, so there's a parallel.
I'm also not a narcissist, though, to be fair. So.
But that's there's a parallel here where it was actually completely unrelated. It's in opera where you know the conductor, right? He has to always look like he's just, you know, all you know, just completely overflowing with passion and energy and emotion and just this, that, and other. And when you were, and this is a symptom apparently of just because it didn't used to be like that. It's only when cameras started recording, right? And only when social media became a thing.
So you become aware that you're acting to the audience,
they have to act. They have to put on that extra, you know, they have to really show that they're invested and emotionally. This whole opera's tearing their soul apart. Can't you see how? Right?
Oh, mate.
You know?
The reason I know you're right is because they do that in League. In League, right? They always do this thing where they'll film that's like a side shot. That was from a fan, I think, but they film like a side shot of the casters. And the guy, if you know the LEC and you're a fan listening now, you're going to instantly know what I'm talking about. The guy, Medic, he already has that disease, Semmler, where he tries to create the iconic call in every fucking match he does. But secondly, in these ones, he does that thing where he doesn't even just cast, you know, he's getting all energetic and he's like, they're coming to the Nexus and they're gonna get there and they're gonna, and then at the end, like people are just watching every time all the Reddit comments like, oh my God, the passion. Like as though he's some like fucking iconic Orthodox saint who just like, died for his beliefs or whatever. Here's the thing, I'm not against it, but I agree with you. There's a bit of showmanship there, guys. If there was no camera, I don't believe they turn tears in their eyes. I think they turn and go like, great fucking job, bro. We killed it. With it. I agree with you. There's a bit of theater there for sure.
That's the issue. And dude, I mean, we used to tread that line, and it was a really fine line to tread. And that's pretty much why we stopped doing it as well, because it's, how to put this, when you know a camera's on, you behave differently. It's just that simple. When you know there's a camera on you.
It's like Twitter. The reason Twitter sucks for arguments is because you're doing it in public with all people judging you, going, red, double. You're like, it makes it shit. You become an asshole, don't you?
Yeah, and when you're and like I've talked about it in the past where it's like we should have had caster cam and all of that, but then when you know that there's caster cam at all times, then it's a different experience. And yeah, sure, maybe you're going to get into it a little bit more, but the reality is that you don't overdo it. You know, it's like you cast the same way that you would cast anyways. You don't add the extra bit.
Mate, the most iconic picture of you casting is obviously the one with you, Moses, and Anders. Yeah. What was the moment that it was based on? What actually happened in the game?
It was Alu going up the ladder on train, just popping heads.
Oh, there you go. Right, so it was this moment that actually isn't itself that famous a moment, to be fair, but when they did it, right, that's a classic thing. They didn't know they were being photographed. That was just like one of those guys walked past and took a bunch of They didn't know they were on camera. That was actually a genuine reaction.
And that's when it matters. Like that's when there's real value in that. And that's what because remember with Room on Fire, we used to do behind the scenes footage of us casting as well. And you immediately know it's just like, it feels weird, you know, because now you know you're being cast, now you know you're being recorded, and so should you add that extra, you know, like you got to add into it, you know, blah, blah, blah. Or can you just be yourself? And but the thing is, if you're just yourself, then maybe there isn't that additional passion that, you know, the Redditor is going to look at, and he sees this other commentator, going, oh, so crazy all the time, but then he sees, Semmler, who's just kind of like, oh, just feeling it. Why doesn't Semmler care as much? Obviously that other guy cares, way more, blah blah blah. And so it just gets really weird really fast. And it almost fucks with your commentary as well, because like you say, this was actually a symptom that we had to deal with at one point, where you just need to cast and let it flow naturally, because the fans know when you're faking it. The fans feel it. They can feel when when it isn't genuine. And so and you notice this, and if you ever like read the Reddit comments where it's just like, oh, so and so's really, it sounds like he's bored, or it sounds like he's really trying to force it, or whatever, blah blah blah. You have to always just be as natural as possible and not think about those things, not think about the camera, not think about all that. So that's why we stopped doing those kinds of like behind the scenes stuff, because I was just like, fuck it. If somebody takes a picture or somebody records us without us knowing it, that's going to be the value, and that's going to be genuine, and that should get people's attention. Because the way that it's going now, this direction where it's going now, where Blast, the casters know they're being recorded all the time. And so I think that they put a little bit more English on it than they would normally. And this Scrawny Launders thing at the end, I didn't really see. I just saw like a picture of Scrawny crying or something, and I was just, I don't know. It's just
It's whatever. You can have your own reaction.
It's whatever. Like,
what I would say, by the way, is there's shoulder content they should have done as well. Why not do a piece where you show from the beginning of the majors, where it's people like Tosspot and Lurpes and Sir Scoots? Why not do a thing where you celebrate the evolution of the talent and the fact that at the end you have all these people who were nobodies? Like, if you don't know, Scrawny and Launders were just some amateurs at like Sevo when I was going in like 2015. People like fucking Harry and Fugo were absolute nobodies coming out of shitter like UK lands in about 2018 or something like that. Like, these people all climbed up. Then you still had the people like Moses and Anders who were still there from the old days, the legend. You have people like Freya who developed in the online era. You could have told an awesome little 10-minute documentary piece about that. And by the way, even if we don't do the event, I can tell you right now, all classic talent would agree to be a talking head over like a Zoom call or something. Red Eye, fucking Richard, me, Sado, Henry, everyone would have done it for the sake of making a cool piece at the end of CSGO. I think that would even be a really beautiful thing for the talent to have in their sort of back pocket or in the portfolio.
Of course, especially because that was kind of a storyline throughout this entire major. I mean, for crying out loud, we had Gamer Legion in the finals versus Vitality. I mean, you had the veterans in Apex who's been around since day one, and then you have these guys like Shuhei who are coming out of nowhere and leading a team to the freaking finals. So I mean, even the major had this storyline going through it over and over again of these young upstarts, the new generation, right? The new generation of guys who are trying to get in here and make a name for themselves. That was pretty much the story of the major since the beginning. So you could have tried to lean into that as well and really said, like, I mean, there's so many directions you could have gone in with content as well. I mean, you had Get Right there in person, for crying out loud. I mean, there was a bunch of guys who were there in person. You could have
had Kenny S in France, and he obviously told you, I'm going to retire now. You didn't even do a piece on that.
No, you didn't. You could have done a highlight reel. You could have done. There's so much stuff you could have done.
Like, right, Kenny, you had a great career. Now here you get to play with Smoo. You won last time. I'm out. Fucking, you know what? I'm not Canadian, but fucking doctor. I've had enough. I don't want to live anymore in a video game Minecraft on Twitch.
It's the way that's just become the meme now.
Has to be. As we have to protect ourselves. Even though it doesn't legally protect you at all. So
fuck it. Now, like talking to talent, then we could actually talk about talent, because if you're going to go that direction as well with this is again why it feels like it was just another Blast event, like another generic Blast event, because instead of bringing in talent that should have been there, they completely overlooked them. I mean, okay, this isn't a knock on Tech Girl either. I think Tech Girl is an excellent talent. She does great work. I watched her throughout the major. She did a fantastic job. She always looked great. She was always professional, always nailing her lines, everything. I mean, she's clearly solid and a veteran. But why is she working a CSGO major? I mean, she doesn't do CSGO events for the. I mean, she doesn't have the kind of career that Stunna has had as a host, right? And so when I'm just sitting here thinking, I was like, okay, come on, how are you not having Stunna and Freya? Freya's your gal. You put her front and center. If you want to give her precedence, absolutely go for it. It's your event in that sort of scenario. But the fact that you don't have Stunna there and you replace Stunna with some random other talent, that blew my mind already right off the bat. And then also, yeah, I mean, you pointed it out in your tweet. The fact that you're bringing on Professor, who again, knowledgeable about CS, has a successful podcast, all that sort of stuff. But really, for the major, you're going to bring him in as an analyst? What's going on there? Why are you not bringing in Yanko? Why are you not? I mean, how does that not?
So I'm just going to say this. I'm sick of people acting like, because the analysts talk for 2 minutes each, they don't say anything and anyone could just fill that in. For a real casual, yes, but for people who know the game, it's night and day between Yanko and Professor. Like, Professor isn't that good an analyst. Like I say, he doesn't even really do that on HLTV Confirm. He's sort of the host more than that. He isn't that type of analyst. He wasn't interesting. He is bland as fuck in terms of like presence and entertainment value. He's not doing like funny jokes. He's just like, he's got a really boring monotone voice. Like, I don't get it, mate. I don't get it at all. Like, my only joke would be this. At this point in time, you got Sponge on the event, you got Professor. Fuck it, hire Striker and make sure there's never any criticism of any event ever again on the fucking HLTV.
Is that how we're doing it?
Apparently.
That's how we're doing it.
Yeah, I don't get it, mate. I mean, here's the thing. You don't even have to do... Look, Yanko, by the way, 100% should have been hired. That's outrageous. But even if you don't, there's not world-class people you can bring and put on the desk. I'm not even just talking about myself. I'd still kill it. But spoiler... I mean, I have no idea if they even would have considered hiring me. I'm more in the PGL camp now, obviously. But I think there's plenty of other people who are really good.
You could have taken myself. Why wasn't
Blair there? Before. He's done majors before, mate.
He's done majors before.
He's got way more fucking tenure than Professor. Yeah.
No, I mean, you had options of guys who had more of a track record, more of a career, and who are more skilled in that particular role. So again, this feels like... Again, this comes back to just that feeling where this is no longer just a celebration of CS in general, where you put the party politics aside. This feels very much like it was just another blast.
By the way, you could have Get Right on that.
Their own thing.
If you don't know, Get Right's one of the only pros who does watch like demos and matches of games he's not in. Like, he actually has like a good understanding of the way they played it, and he's a good on camera. You could have had Get Right, mate. He might have even agreed to do it. Or same thing, you saw him on Twitter tweeting, fucking Taz. One of the best personalities ever in the history of Counter-Strike. Command a whole stage. And, by the way, has interesting thoughts on teams because he was in a very idiosyncratic team. These would be fucking banger sort of last hires. Remember, the Professor guy isn't like super blooded in. He's done a bit of some other times, like a kind of eight say. Like, this actually, I think, would have been a very interesting hire. Like, there's another thing. If you want to take chances, take fucking good chances. It's like when they say that thing politically, so I'm like, we want change, you moron. If things get worse, that's changing. You want positive change, you cretin. You don't say you want change, do you? That's what someone who's a fucking bum says, literally.
No, we're coming back to the Chesterton fence here. Like, why was the fence there to begin with before you changed? Yeah. That's just, and it pains me to say as well. I mean, Frankie also could have been a part of this broadcast.
Easily.
He wanted to include diversity and diversity.
She would be mega for exit interviews. She's probably no joke, she is probably the best person in esports at exit interviews because, look, it's why she's also insufferable on Twitter. She will just straight up to your face ask you, like, Nico, people are going to say this is a failure in your career that has happened. And then he'd have to answer that. And then she might even put it to him like, look, I know it's really heartbreaking, but aren't you going to look back on this tournament? But the way she does it, because she's actually good at interviews, is she has skill. Like when she doesn't have tactics, because that's appropriate, she's putting your feet to it. No, she would have been good, mate, I guarantee. I just don't want to be in the same room as her. So as long as she's in a different room with me with a mic, that's cool. Don't worry about that. Yeah. Keep a camera between me and her.
It's fine. It's fine. On a personal level, on a professional level, she knocks it out of the park. On a personal level, don't.
Yeah. And plus, I'm not a gay person in the Middle East, so I don't really have to worry about what Frankie says to her. So, right, are we supposed to all pretend that didn't happen? Weird that, innit? And also, you might have just blown people's minds there, but that is factual. I'm not.
I'm looking at the list of other
there's a lot of shit on there, mate.
You put a banger.
Do you know the trophy one people didn't notice? Not only did it look like shit, it was smaller than the Blast World Trophy because they went to show
that picture where I was putting it in the cabinet.
It's the same size as the MVP trophy. It looks almost the same. Like, this is just so shit. No, the joke is when it's putting it in the cabinet, you're just thinking, like, you see on the side, like a big, like, fucking, almost like World Cup thing, which I can't remember what tournament that was from. I assume EPL or something. Then you have the one of, like, Blast or whatever, and you just think, like, bro, which spot the odd one out. Oh, the one that looks like it's dipped in nacho cheese. Yeah, that's the other. That was the last ever CSGO major. That's the only major one you can't.
The thing is, it's like up to this point, all of the major trophies have looked, let's say, imposing, right? A big classic kinds of trophies made out of metal, things that look like they're going to last forever. And I guess that I mean, I will say the PGL one of this major of
PGL Antwerp wasn't good, Sam. If you go and look at that one, it just looks essentially like sort of like a pin, but just blown up. Like that one wasn't that great. But I agree, most of them were classics. Yeah, of course.
Right. I was looking back at trophies today where it's like the MLG Columbus one, because I was thinking along this line where it's just like, why is it that now? Because I was looking a lot. Obviously, the major comparison one that came out was the ESL trophies, right? Because I really do think that ESL do the best trophies. And
I did laugh at that meme where they took the Get Right image of him hugging that trophy. trophy. And they just edited in that
little...
shit blast one. It did ruin the whole vibe, didn't it? It just ruined the whole fucking vibe.
No. I mean, then I was like, okay, hold on. Is this just PGL and just Blast who are making their trophies all about them? And then I did see that, like, okay, MLG Columbus, for example, that trophy obviously had like the MLG symbol. But then again, it was a massive trophy with like carabits and shit worked into it and just all sorts of, cool stuff and just massive, really imposing trophy. So, okay, fine, there was an MLG logo in it, but it was still a proper, imposing, impressive trophy. Whereas this Blast one, I mean, dude, it's not even made out of metal. It's not going to last. It's a chunk of plastic. The thing is going to fall apart if you hit it wrong. Like if you drop it from a high place, it's just going to crack in two. So they literally showed how they made it. It's just some fucking 3D printed, spray painted piece of shit. Whereas you look at these massive ESL trophies. I mean, really, ESL now, they just knock it out of the park when it comes to the trophies, because they just look imposing, they look classic, they look magnificent, just massive metal, glorious trophies. I mean, that kind of thing, that's something you would have on your mantle for the rest of your life and say, like, yeah, that's something you want to show off. The Blast one, for crying out loud, nobody's going to look at that twice. They're going to be like, oh yeah, okay, cool. Did you get that as a party favor somewhere? Like, did you go to the dinner where it's at one of those restaurants where you have all the games that you play and it spits out tickets and you get all the tickets.
Here's my joke.
You go and try and find something with the tickets.
This
try and buy
looks like a shit NFT that you made an actual real model of that as a collectible.
There you go. It's just. It's disappointing, and for the sake of what, making it Blast and trying to find some kind of like progressive edge or something like that. Again, if you want to do that for a Blast event, fine, but for the major event should be classic. It should transcend all of that. And so
mate, if you're going to make that shit thing, don't brag about it in a fucking segment. That's why I did that clown meme where it's like, you're just like starting to put the face
keep
on.
Putting
like,
the paint on.
I think most of the majors are too generic, really. And then you sort of like draw your eyes in. You're going, yeah, the thing is, we've got a different route. We've innovated a little bit. Then you're like, right, putting the hair on. You're just going like, that's why we 3D printed our logo and dipped it in nacho cheese, popped the nose on for the last ever CSGO major. It's like, brilliant. Yeah. 10 out of 10. I want to know that, right? Like, when those movies in the 80s are made and you look back now at the script and the casting and you're like, they were on so much cocaine when they came up with this movie. I want to know what the fuck level of my joke was, they must have been microdosing at Blast, but someone got the decimal point off by 1 because holy fuck, they must really have thought, by the way, that after that segment that you saw about how innovative it was and looking at it, that like eventually your eyes would sort of attune and you'd be like, this is revolutionary. They really thought this was going to go down a storm. Everyone, like the joke is, they'd probably do it privately, but I bet I could even get the Vitality players to say it looks like shit. No one likes that trophy. Is there anyone who says it looks cool? Who doesn't work for Blast, obviously.
Well, it's I mean, if we count people on Twitter as anyone, I guess, right? Do they even count at this point? But I've had people say like, "Oh, I think it's good to try to do something different." It's like, yeah, but different isn't always good. Like you said, change isn't always good. And if you're going to try to do something different, just iterate on what has been magnificent in the past. Why do you have to try and go in some completely different direction? Why are you taking risks like that on a major? It's like, okay, your events are prestigious. They're still one of the standout calendar events, Copenhagen, something like that. Take a risk at your event. If you make it, then it really is Blast. It's your tournament. It's Blast tournament. Fine. Fucking take some risks there. And if you want to try and mess with your logo or mess with the direction or try and be innovative or whatever, for a major, this is supposed to transcend all of that. It's supposed to be something that just is going to last throughout time. And it's like the major championship. So go with something classic and maybe innovate a little bit with it, but still keep something classic and timeless the way that ESL have done with their trophies. I mean, ESL to me still just make the best trophies because they are timeless trophies.
They have some shit ones too, man.
You're gonna look at that and you're gonna say 50 years from now, you say that looks.
They have some shit ones though. Here's the thing: they do for Cologne and Katowice. I give you that. They have
Cologne and Katowice, those are amazing.
They had a 3D printed ESL Pro League one, like season 8 one, that looked absolute shit, man. It looked like some Lego blockers. It looked really bad.
That's their tournament. Who gives a fuck? It's Pro League, whatever. Who gives a shit? It's
so technically, I will say this will be the most iconic trophy in a sense. You will immediately know which one was the last CS:GO major.
So bad,
and it's even thematically on point for being in France because everything's just dipped in cheese for some no reason.
So in a way that this is so good what is it?
That was
Good
a
media,
save.
bad media. It's
Yeah.
all
I
good.
spun it for them. I should be their spin doctor, man. That was pretty good. It wasn't a bad angle, was it?
We are talking about it after all. I mean, if everybody's probably seen that trophy now, and they're going to remember, and I guess that's why they strategically put their logo in it, because now everybody's going to have that logo seared into their mind. They're going to hate.
And
the
it'll
logo.
be referenced in every future trophy creation meeting ever as make sure it looks nothing like that shit blast one which did to natural cheese. Like, that will be said in every future major till the end of time. So in a way, again, they win, don't they? We're the fools talking about it now. They win the attention economy.
There you go. Yeah, that's probably the entire strategy around it. We're
It's
just going to
5D
be so
Jenga.
fucking hideous that they can't be ignored going forward. Everybody will remember this trophy. Fair enough. They win in the end.
Not
Just
like my
another little
career.
piece of our soul shriveling up and dying. Oh fuck. But I mean, as far as the what's your impression as far as the entire event as a whole? Was there anything?
It was the worst major in the history of Counter-Strike. Across the board, full spectrum. The games were shit. The storylines were shit. Even the best storyline, which is that Zero won the major and Vitality won the major and Apex won as an IGL and Zonic. Yes, and who did they play in the playoffs? Easily the most fucking underwhelming list of names you will ever see in the history of Counter-Strike. The funny thing is, by the way, in terms of actual, like, the way the teams against them played, they weren't even bad, but no one will ever look back. Semmler, this is where the fans are really huffing copium if they believe these teams will become top teams. In 4 years, people will look back and go, who the fuck is Into the Breach? Same as you do about Quantum Bellator Fire. People will look back even at Gamer Legion and be like, who? And then someone might go, oh, it's the team that Immer guy and Shui used to play in. All right, okay. That's it. Like, it was the shittest. Everything about it was shit.
Yeah, they really did get kicked in the dick on that front. I mean, they could not catch a break in terms of teams performing. I mean,
only really had like 2 or 3 iconic series, didn't it?
Well, it had what? The quarterfinal between Heroic and FaZe.
Had the FaZe Na'Vi. They had Team Liquid versus Heroic. Those were bangers. Yeah,
FaZe
those were
Na'Vi
legit.
match, yeah. FaZe Heroic on that best of one. What else? Liquid almost Liquid almost beating Heroic in the Legend stage as well. That was a fucking banger, best of 3. That could have gone either way. That was razor.
That's about it though, mate. Like, look, I get that in the moment people were thrilled by, Monty fragging people out and the upsets, but like the actual other matches, they weren't like classic matches you'd go back and watch in 5 years. Those are the ones you've just listed there. They're the best ones. Spoiler, if you didn't see the major, just watch the ones he talked about. That's all you need to watch. You don't even need to watch the final, actually. It was just all right.
It's just an all right final. It's a 2-0, 16-6 blowout on the first map and 16-13. I mean, at least Gamer Legion bounced back and didn't get just single-digited in both maps. That's kind of how I was feeling at the end there, where it's like, okay, well, they didn't just get completely railed on Nuke. They put up a fight. That did screw my bet, because I did actually think that they were just going to get completely destroyed and be completely deflated. But Gamer Legion showed some fight on that second map, so fair enough. But I mean, all right, Cadian's never gonna hoist a major trophy. Do we feel as bad for Cadian as we do for Nico?
Not even fucking slightly, because here's the 2 reasons why. One, I don't care what. No one can tell me shit. I am Kanye in 2005, and you can't tell me nothing. I've seen all of Counter-Strike, not CSGO, all of Counter-Strike history, every major, every great game, every great player, Semmler. And I can tell you right now, Cadian is not yet on the list of like greatest in-game leaders of all time. I don't even know if he'll be top 10 yet. Like, he is not someone, by the way, where it's like, oh, his career ends without a major. If anything, if you know his career, and even when they came offline from the online era, you'd actually be like, wow, he was in for a couple of them. He could have won a couple. That's quite impressive, actually. He's more someone where, because he was a journeyman, I'm impressed he got to this level. And then the second detail, it's sort of what Maui said that people got upset about. I'm just going to say it right now. Cadian has main character syndrome in a way that I think is so inappropriate for someone who's the AWPer, but not a great AWPer. If he just did it as an IGL, I'd get it. But he just wants to make the players and call the game and give the speech and do the interview and hype the fans. And at the end, essentially, it's like, it's all about me. Me, Cadian. I mean, Heroic. And I love you guys for fighting for me, Cadian. The story of Cadian. Like, bro, like, you're just trying too hard. It's like what we said about the casters. You're just trying to force iconic moments. Let them happen. Carrigan just has them happen to him. Carrigan just goes and wins the tournament, mate. Carrigan just plits himself in shit positions so his superstars frag out. He wins. Some dickhead on HLTV goes, he isn't even good. Just replace him. His stars won it. And he in his brain goes, I did my job then. If I made my stars the best and we won the game, I did my fucking job. I'll just take the trophy. You have the HLTV thread, I'll take the trophy. The difference is, Nico, it is a fucking crying shame he never won a major. And there's more than that, mate. Elige, how about him? He never won a fucking major. There's a few names like the Guardians way ahead of fucking Cadian. Even for in-game leaders, like in the modern day, like, yeah, he'd be one of the top ones of the last couple of years, but man, there's so many great players didn't win majors.
That's actually one that that completely I mean, I guess that kind of just dropped off completely. But like Elige, sure, Liquid make excuse me, they make top 8 at the major. They lose to Apex in the quarterfinals. But Elige completely disappeared this major. He had maybe like one good map,
basically. Yeah,
yeah, he had like one good map,
and it was against a shit team.
Do you think that was? Do you think that was? Wait, do you think he
he's
crumbled
been in a
mentally?
slump for a while, mate. He's been in a slump for a while. The problem with him, as far as I can tell, is he was one of those guys like Device, where they just never were bad. Like even their like floor was as good as some people's ceiling. They were just consistent as fuck. But then the last year or so, basically around not long around the time like they got Yekindar and the Nitro came back, he never was the same player again. If people don't know, in the first year of the online era, he was still banging out of control. Really good player, clearly a top X player. Something's just fallen off with his game, mate. And the problem with him is, he's another one of those guys like a Device where it's all in their own head. There's no way the skills have gone. That map you were talking about against Fluxer, he was fucking spray god again, killing people all over the place. I don't know what's happened. I don't know if he's given up roles in the team. I don't know if Daps and Nitro use him differently, but something does happen to his game, because the idea he could ever be even close to, forget the worst player, just not like one of the best players on Liquid, is outrageous. Whereas I'll say it right now, I think fucking Orsi outperformed Elige this tournament, and Orsi's the third best player on the team now. Like, that is whack. And so it is a sad ending, because obviously the prime of Elige, if you're talking like 2017 to 2020, dude, he could have won a couple of majors, and he's going to end with none. And right now, as we go to CS2, unless he starts turning it around, it'll have been quite a while. He hasn't had good form for ages now. Like, does he ever turn it around? Has he gone essentially the dreaded Shocks path, where you're just never a star again, no matter what you do? That'll be tragic.
It would be, yeah, no, that would be just.
Oh, just realised, holy shit, I know what it is, Semmler. I know what it is. In League of Legends, we always say when people just get way worse inexplicably that the skill vampires came in overnight and sucked all the skill out. I know what happened in this team. It was in proximity of, think of these names, Stewie 2K, Fallen, and then Shocks. Bro, it just rubbed off on him. He just became washed, did he? They were probably in there with the rubber ducky. Ooh la la, I can still be the entry flagger. Ooh, what? Bloop. Then fucking Fallen just like, I don't know what you do. Give me the op. There's 8 kills. Shit. Can I have money? And then fucking obviously Stewie over there like, bloody hell, 2 p.m. games. I don't even bloody go to sleep till 6 a.m. Tell you what, get me a coffee, will you? Of course I won't fucking go for coffee with you. You're my coach, you bloody piece of shit. Mate, he just became washed. Actually, maybe it's like bad environment, you know, he grew up with the wrong influences. They made it seem edgy and cool. Next thing you know, fucking Shocks, Fall, and Stewie 2K and Alicia just running up in people's houses through the front door. Like, what's going on in it? That's it. I won't talk about that. That's a man-based reference. There you go. There you go.
I don't think they get away with that.
Because he's gone missing, hasn't he? He's gone missing, Elish.
I don't think he goes that way.
No, it's all right.
But
it was just a fun theory, guys. It wasn't a real thing, was it? This is sad though. He's just washed in here at the moment. I hope he can turn it around though. He is a great player in history.
This is going to be this whole shakeup. You know, talking about change, like the transition into CS:GO 2. Who's going to be able to pull that off well, and who's going to be able to maintain their level? I mean, you really could. Like that's the truly scary thing coming out of this player break. And if that is going to be the transition, that we go straight into CS:GO 2 post transition, post. Sorry,
CS2.
CS2.
It's not called CS:GO 2.
Oh, okay, whatever. CS2. Yeah. In my mind,
I didn't make
the
name.
CS:GO. It might as well be a fucking patch. It's still the same game, but whatever. Yeah. CS2. You know, if they go straight into CS2, dude, that's going to shake things up in a real way, because I mean, it's a different game. I mean, different movement, different feel, different. I mean, you got players saying that it feels like 64 tick and not 128. I mean, that's going to throw people off. I mean, there's going to be stuff where we're really going to see, especially the veteran players like Elige, whether or not they've got it in them to adapt to a new game and put the hours in, or if they're going to get left behind, and this is just going to be the send off, right? The CS:GO major and whatever other tournaments come up. I mean, I think IEM Dallas Liquid are going to be playing at that. I'd be amazed if they didn't, considering it's pretty much their only home event. Yeah, we're gonna have an Alice. Oh yeah, there's also Blast Washington. Although I don't know if did they make it for Blast Washington? That's a good question.
The problem is, Semmler, they claim that the open beta now, behind the scenes, will maybe start like October, maybe September. So that would actually mean we have all the tournaments. We have like Cologne, we have loads of fucking Blast, etc. So the stupid thing is, we're end up having way more tournaments than we thought.
Doesn't Cologne come after the player break?
Even if it does, it would be in CSGO, wouldn't it?
Do you think so?
I just said if the open beta is in September, logically, how can the game?
Fair enough.
You know what I mean? If that's when the beta starts for everyone, surely the game doesn't get switched till then at least. And surely beta, I don't even know. Dude, that's why I think the major might be scheduled for next year as well. Because normally you wouldn't shift in beta. They'll be all bugs. You'd switch when retail comes. I mean, there's not going to be a sold, you know what I mean? You'd switch when you exit beta, surely, so like at the end of the year or early next year. So I get here's the thing.
Okay,
it wasn't the end of CSGO. It was just the end of the CSGO majors. That's what I tried to frame it as, you know. As far as I know, there's still a bunch more tournaments, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's
it's certain, but that's what I've heard.
The timing just feels so fucked yet again.
Oh, it does.
Yet again. It just feels like that is the capstone right there. It should have been the CSGO major. We end it now, and now we move on into the next game, and we see who thrives and who dies and who moves on and all of that, right? Like that should have been the play. And instead, now we're going to have a whole bunch of other CSGO events that are going to carry on instead of getting that fresh start post major. It does feel a little disappointing.
By the way, you are right. The player break now is before Cologne because now it's from June to July.
That's why I thought Cologne
it used to be like August or something.
Because ESL would they'd be salivating over that. I mean, just the best case scenario for them as far as Cologne would be concerned would for it to be CS2 because then, dude, everybody's going to be tuning in to watch that event to see how teams perform, what the game looks like.
Another thing that's mad is, how do you end the last CSGO major without a video, like Marvel cutscenes at the end about CS2?
Right.
Am I missing something? What the fuck's going on? Why is that not like a thing at the end of the fucking stream? So weird, isn't it? The decisions made are so weird about this major, mate. And also, you're just giving such a terrible negative stereotype because obviously French people are considered to be lazy, at least by the English. So, like, then you just put in no fucking effort and they're just out of smoking. I would get to it like that. Je suis fatigué.
Why does everybody have to sound like Shocks?
They're like your other voices red eye. Of course, every commentator just bloody hell. Oh, Lord, does I fucking love you, mate. We came up through Blast together. We got brutally, savagely wrecked. But here we are, in the end, me and you, the bitter end. And first with the 3K.
That's why, I mean, again, that's all we're going to be feeling about this major. It's not even a major. It just feels like a Blast Fall Finals or something. It just feels like a Blast event. Like, all right, cool, we had a Blast event. Awesome. And Zywoo got the trophy at the end. And that's supposed to be important. Oh, yeah, because it's called a major. But did it feel like a major? Was there anything that made it stand out as a major? Unfortunately, it just felt like another event. That's probably going to be the mediocre way that this all kind of finishes up and as far as CSGO majors are concerned. And then great, Blast, they really built us up to, I guess that's also why the disappointment is there, is because, dude, they wouldn't shut up about all of the amazing, awesome things that they were going to do this major going into it. Like you really were. I was interested. I was like, holy shit, okay. Usually these guys don't fuck around. Like, Nicholas and all these guys, it feels like, okay, they're going to be able to do something good. And they just wouldn't shut up about it. Just like, oh, we're going to knock it. Hopefully, we live up to the expectations, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, no, sorry, you didn't. you really didn't. You dropped the ball pretty hard. And, well, here we are. So, I mean, yeah, that's kind of where it stands as far as the major is concerned. I mean, again, it is worth mentioning that we did have, if there was one interesting storyline, I was interested in seeing whether or not Gamer Legion would be able to keep going as far as they did. And yeah, sure enough, every step of the way, they kept winning. They started off horribly with 2 losses. So they already had their backs to the wall at the very beginning of the tournament. Whereas, Vitality weren't even in that phase, Challengers stage, right? But Gamer Legion start 0-2 and then fight their way back, reverse sweep and get out by beating Mao's OG and Forza. And then and then they start off with a loss in the Legend stage as well as against Na'Vi, and then proceed to just win out from there. So that was a pretty cool story. I was happy about following that one. If anything, there was a silver lining there to just follow along and see would they be able to keep making it or not, just because they played entertaining CS and it was a good time to watch. Past that, though, also worth mentioning Apex as well. Although,
by the way, I know what to say about this. Here's the problem. If you're someone like Apex, like I'll just bring up the thing so I can have a quick look at this, right? The other teams generally, it's fine that they got the upsets. I complain about the format, not the teams. So if you are, for example, the obvious ones would be like Into the Breach. Right, Into the Breach actually beat real teams. They beat like fucking FaZe. They beat Ents, didn't they? Like these are real. Look, they're in BO1s. Yes, we get that, but those are real teams that you're actually beating there. And then later on in the tournament, they were at the point where, let me see, they beat Fnatic. Fnatic's a real team. They're not a top team, but they're a top 10 team or like the 11th best team. Then they go to the playoffs. They played actually a pretty good series against Vitality. That's an underdog story I can get into. Even Apex, you go to Apex, right? So they're beating NIP. Not that good, the other ones, aside from that. Then they beat Team Liquid. That's not terrible. There's a couple of nice wins. Gamer Legion only had the win against Heroic. That's it. Everyone else fucking sucked that they played. They even lost BO1s to the Mongols and Complexity. That means even Gamer Legion got punished by all the upsets in the shit format. Because if Gamer Legion had started out, let's say the Heroic series was them in the quarterfinals and they beat Heroic. And then in the next round, Semmler, they play FaZe. And you know what? They could have maybe beaten FaZe at this tournament. And then they play Vitality in the final. Then who the fuck's complaining? Everyone's like, they're bangers. Whereas at this point in time, both for the champion, you're like, you never even beat anyone fucking good to win the title. And even Gamer Legion, it's like, look, props for beating Heroic. That's one really big series. But aside from that, who gives a fuck? Like, you played against a bunch of teams that were nobody's. Like, the rest of your run looks like a Snow Cup. That's real.
They lost to Na'Vi as well.
So, like, that's the other thing about upsets I hate. It's not just when the upset, like, fucks up the big team not going. It's when too many upsets happen, you ruin the run of everyone. This happened at the last major Semmler, Rio. Outsiders ended up with a run of, like, they beat Fnatic, Mouse, and then Heroic. But they didn't play the massive dogs that win all the time. Like, it actually ruins even the teams that go deep if you have a shit bracket, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, do you want to repeat that point that Tommy made in terms of viewership as well, where it's just everybody keeps saying, it feels like every single time everybody keeps saying, oh my gosh, the underdog, they won, this is awesome. But the viewership just doesn't reflect that. The viewership, the way that the viewership works is that when the underdog beats the favorite team and beats the bigger brand, viewership drops off a cliff because people tune in to watch FaZe. They don't tune in to watch Gamer Legion. And
I think it's because it's the opposite. You know, fans always say, I'm the one with the contrarian take, Sam. No. That's vocal fans on Twitter and Reddit have to have the contrarian take. So their contrarian take is, actually, this really badly seeded shit BO1 format is good because actually these are the secret best teams that you just didn't know about and you just don't know Counter-Strike. Meanwhile, also they say, I love upsets. They make the tournament more exciting and then nobody watches. That's because they're such a tiny minority, a vocal minority, that people think that's Counter-Strike. The real fans are fans of massive teams. They're fans of Na'Vi. They're fans of Brazilian teams. They're fans of G2. They're fans of Nico and Simple and Divine. These are who people are fans of. Like, you have to remember, the average fan's like some 15-year-old kid with skins who plays matchmaking. It isn't someone on Reddit. It isn't someone who even watches this show, by the way. Like, we're all, even people who watch these shows are in like the 0.1% of the 1% of hardcore fans. Like, we're all the losers just going super ham on niche shit. Like, there's the casual fans just want the classic story. They want Hulk Hogan against The Undertaker at WrestleMania. They don't want some fucking like new guy who's got talent but he hasn't been pushed. They want the classic storyline. So yeah, it just shows time and time again in the viewership. Like, in my opinion, if it wasn't for the storyline that people knew, we're going to see like Z would win the major. I don't even think the final would have that many viewers, mate.
Dude, again, though, like, you just nailed it, though. I mean, if we're here bitching about the fact that there wasn't any of this glorious shoulder content that we were expecting to see build around the major and the narrative and everything, I mean, again, there has to be a reason for them not creating this content. And it may be as cynical as that, where they say, well, this is going, if we create this content and put this work and money and effort into it, it's going to appeal to 5% of the viewership. 95% of the viewership won't care one way or the other. They're just going to want to watch the match. That is probably the thought process behind it, because you're right. We are in a bit of a niche state here where we're not the Reddit commenters. We're not, we're if you're tuning into podcasts like these, you are one of the hardcore fans that actually really wants to get into the nitty gritty of it. And so that kind of content would appeal to you, but is that the kind of content that's going to appeal to 95%? Personally, I would say yes, but if the 95% who are tuning in don't even know that content is a thing, they don't know what they're missing out on if they haven't seen it before, right? Whereas obviously we do, but then, you know, if last factor that in and say, well, you know, if we have to put up with 5% of the people bitching versus 95% of who aren't going to care, well, then we'll just save the money and spend the money elsewhere or put it into our pockets, whatever. I mean, I think that's much more likely with the whole reason why they don't do any of this content is because they're just being cynical about it. Well, that is pretty much. I mean, that's. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that really stood out for the major.
I mean, I can give some small storylines. Like, for example, the Into the Breach one. Normally, if you weren't watching the tournament, you know when people only tune in for the big games and they look on the bracket like, what? They lost to them. If you actually want to see a really exciting, like, one-off run, it's a one-off, by the way. They aren't even good online. And I don't believe when Cypher leaves this team that they're going to be a really good team. But if you go and watch the Into the Breach upsets of their game against Vitality, dude, they were bringing the fucking fight to these top teams. They were actually doing, like, old school style, like, noob rushes almost, just hard rushes into sights. And that Cypher guy was actually out fragging some of the best aimers in the world with his AK, including Ziwu. Then you had the Apex guys. Apex guys were a bunch of veterans and some younger players, and the blend was just fucking awesome. Like, Jacobs was still, he wasn't good in the playoffs, but still a top player generally. You obviously have Stickles, like an underrated supportive element, and even had some good fragging in the playoffs. The JL guy, he's a fucking moron, but he can certainly frag in Counter-Strike. Nork, actually, people don't get this. They think because he was in NIP that he's like a veteran player. He played fuck all lands in NIP. It was the online era. He played like an IM Katowice before we went online. He actually was pretty good in this tournament. He was actually outperforming Zebo at one point in time, hitting some clutch shots. So basically, like, then obviously you have the Gamer Legion guys. The IMA guy, I have to make this point. Yes, most of the teams except Heroic and Vitality were nobody teams. But still, this on LAN to be at a major, I think he was in one major before and they did badly, Rio maybe. This is one of the craziest, like, almost rookie debuts at a major I've ever seen, mate. Like, he actually was going to win the MVP if he just fragged harder on the second half of the last map. It's only because he had a nightmare last half to the tournament he didn't get the MVP. Other than that, the reason why he would have won it is because, mate, he was doing it all from T-side against Heroic on T-side. Remember, Heroic is a very good team. He went something like 47 kills and 25 deaths on T-side. Like, you don't get impact. Like, that's the sort of impact, by the way, I expect from, like, fucking Spinks or Nico or Access, some god rifler, not some fucking no-name person from Romania. And I'll just tell him this. I'm going to tell him it privately. You got to change that fucking alias, mate, or keep it as IME. Don't put IM. IM can't be Googled. No one's going to be able to know how to say it. Like, that's terrible branding. Make it like Imma or with an IE or whatever. So, like, this guy, though, has a real future. The Cypher guy has a future. Nork could probably be good. I think this Imma guy, though, is the fucking pick of the bunch, mate. He actually looks like he could be a world-class rifler. I want to see him on OG, Mouse, ENCE. I want to see him on one of these teams. Like, I think he could do a lot of work, mate.
The cynical side of me, though, kicks in where it's like the reason why we're not seeing big changes like that is because Gamer Legion now, he is going to be the most valuable asset available for purchase.
I mean, why would you sell him?
Exactly. Why would you sell him? And also, if you are going to sell him, you're probably going to be asking for that fuck off money. You're probably going to be asking for some serious money, hundreds of thousands for a buyout.
I would say, bear in mind they got sticker money from this, and they're going to probably think they're going to qualify to the next major. Naively, I don't think they maybe will, but this is where you should be asking for 300k. There should be like a Spinks buyout, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the question is whether or not anybody's going to have that kind of money to go around right now or not. That's what I'm really wondering. Some of the bigger orgs, obviously, there's going to be bigger orgs like the Vitalities, the G2s, like those guys are always going to have some money to throw around. I'm curious if an ENCE or somebody else like that is going to be able to roll in and pick them up and make something happen there. Or Gamer Legion just try and ride this in. But again, that's the reality. I mean, that is the craziest thing, right? Is that BNE, for example, don't qualify to anything else. They literally just perform at majors and then live off of sticker money for the rest of the year until the next major. I told this story.
Before the major, they played a LAN just before. It was that Challenger tournament in Melbourne, and they lost the final to Movistar Riders, who... Just remember, we are not back in time. They don't have some players. Like, he's long gone, mate. They have like a not as good AWP called Martinez, who's all right. Like, they're even losing then. That's one of the things I hate about this narrative. I'll probably do some other separate content on it, maybe Snake and Banter or something. But I hate this narrative that, like, these were just the secret good teams. Bro, some of them play online and aren't good. Some of them play at LANs and aren't good. And, like, the BNA one's the best example ever. They have all that sticker money from all those majors, and they never do sweet fuck all elsewhere. Like, they sometimes go to real tournaments. They just get bombed. Like, they're just not... Somehow, like you're saying, it's just owning at the major when they're like sort of the favourite shit in their pants that they can perform somehow. Like, let's be real. Yeah, there's a world they almost did beat FaZe here, but they didn't. So that they didn't even get the scalp they're normally supposed to, right? Who gives a shit?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they did manage to make it past. No, I mean, that's the thing. They didn't really manage to do anything
against G2.
G2 in a best of one. That's right.
Yep, that's it. That's all they did. I mean, they almost beat FaZe, so that's something, but almost
2-1 versus FaZe. Fair enough.
Almost doesn't count, does it? That's a problem.
Yeah, once that happens, that's about it. And then phase 2-1 Na'Vi in that epic series. Again, it's just worth mentioning. There were a few bangers out there. Phase Na'Vi in the elimination match of the Legend stage. That if you need to watch a good best of 3, go back and watch that one. Totally worth your time. Rops even had the mega tweet where he's like, "Oh, I hope you enjoyed the major grand final." It's like, dude, that series was amazing. So go and check that one out if you want a good best of 3 to tune into. If you missed that one live, definitely worth it. I mean, the BNE guys, it's just, you are going to have, like, I wonder if Gamer Legion fall into that kind of pattern where they're just going to keep trying to run into RMRs and keep trying to qualify to the next phase. I mean, now they're going to have a very high seed, aren't they? I mean, in the next stage, they should just skip the challenger stage, right? And go straight into Legends and go from there. So, I mean, at least they have that to fall back on. They can just keep grinding this whole year and then go from there, right? Unless Valve decide to change it up.
You still have to play the RMR.
They still have to play the RMR. Yeah, okay. So, I mean...
But you'd have a higher seed there, I think. I'm not sure. I don't know how it fucking works, mate. Who knows at this point?
Well, I mean, good on them. That just about sums it up. That just about sums up the major in terms of what we saw. I mean, I guess other disappointment, though, would be Ents, not seeing more out of them, unfortunately. It really feels like they dropped the ball. Fnatic overperformed, if anything. Weren't expecting to see that many... such close matches out of them, but they get upset by it into the breach in the last one, so that was painful. It was
also the Nip story. Like, Nip basically almost made it through, didn't they? Like, shocking the world with just coming together at the last moment, but then they blew that match. If you didn't see the Apex one there, on paper, Nip should have won that game, and they were in both matches, and they just let it blow them. So if they'd have been in there, them against Team Liquid would have been a fun game at least.
Probably, yeah, that would have been... Then it might have been a closer match in the sense that Liquid might have been able to actually win in that sort of scenario because they kind of know what to expect from some of those Nip players. Whereas against Apex, I mean, what are you doing if you're Liquid? You got no prep, you got nothing going for you there. I mean, all right, that's pretty much summing up of most of what I wanted to talk about tonight in terms of the major. Good, bad, and the ugly. I mean, if anything, it's just going to show the level that you are at right now if you're running a major and just how many opportunities there are to improve in future majors. Now, if TOs are being cynical and they don't want to spend the money because they feel like people just want to tune into the games, and I know certain TOs think this way. I mean, it takes a lot to move the needle for some of these TOs to get them to put additional money into the content, because for them, there are certain TOs that literally just think like, listen, people just want to watch the match and that's it. And everything else is kind of filler to try and keep people into the stream, tuned into the stream in between commercial breaks. But people just want to watch the matches. And so that's what we'll focus on. And fine, fair enough if that's how you want to approach it. But I hope that going forward in like the next major to kick off, I mean, if we can assume that the next major is going to be kicking off with CS2, that there's going to be something, that there's going to be some additional content or something there to try and build interesting storylines to get people tuning in, because there was still a decline in terms of viewership. I mean, they still broke 1.5 million for the grand finals, but that's still a far shout from the 2.75 of Stockholm. And you had...
I think for real, if the tournament had been awesome, I assume the other one would be like Boston Major or something.
No. You had the other PGL one. How am I blanking?
Antwerp.
There you go. Antwerp.
I assume if they'd have had a banger tournament that'd been really good, and in the final it'd actually been either, I mean, Heroic's not that great, unfortunately, because it's not a giant org. Let's say it had been G2 against Na'Vi or something, or FaZe against Na'Vi or something. That actually, I don't know if it would break the record, but it could have come second. It could have been like 1.8 million. Remember, it's the last major. If you'd hyped it properly with all the shoulder content, like, holy shit, Kerrigan against fucking whatever, I think you could have done it, but sadly they didn't get there, so unlucky.
Unlucky. I mean, that is also just the way. Oh, that's also a point that you brought up earlier and that we could touch on real quick before moving on is I think that I mean, to be fair to Blast, they did just get completely wrecked when it came to scheduling, because I think what's happening, this is kind of touching on what you're talking about, where a TO may sometimes just have to take control of the situation and say like, listen, we're running a business here. We need to actually do this in order to, get more viewership and get more sponsors. We need to move this match around so that we're putting it in a prime time slot instead of putting it at a regular slot. Because the theory is that we were kicking around is that a lot of the time the schedule broke down the way that it did because FaZe just happened to be playing first and the other team happened to be playing last, and there must be like a minimum amount of time that needs to happen between matches for the players, and so the schedule just keeps rolling on, and they're not actually swapping matches around. If they were trying to maximize viewership and maximize revenue, obviously you'd be putting FaZe Na'Vi in the primetime slot. You'd be putting these monster matches in the primetime slot, FaZe Heroic. instead of having them, the first match at 11:30 in the morning in EU, for example.
Here's another problem. Let's say you did put it in the prime slot. Let's say FaZe versus Na'Vi was at 8 p.m. Semmler, but you've stupidly decided to do a rolling schedule. So if all the matches before are 2-0s and quick 16-4s, then I tune in at 8 o'clock, right? Can't wait for this Champions League final. Fucking hell, can't wait. What? We're on the third map already? Mate, you can't do that. Like, if you want it to be sports, casuals don't watch every game. They don't. People have this sickness in esports. League of Legends is the worst for it. They believe the fan should tune in for second one of the day until the end of the whole broadcast day. Nobody watches sports that way. Nobody watches esports that way. Hence why the matches have different viewing figures. So it's also stupid as fuck in that sense. Like, that, one of the things I thought was crazy about that is that actually even happened for one of the games. Like, there was a few times I had to call people up an hour early to come on to the watch party. Like, it's not going to be at the time it was scheduled at. Like, this is why. And by the way, this is where players go, but I don't want it to be. No one gives a fuck about you, you idiot. Play the game. Click the buttons, dickhead. Get the 50k and shut the fuck up. You don't get to decide how the broadcast goes so that you can nip out an hour earlier and go and see some fucking fangirl who isn't your girlfriend at the after party. Shut the fuck up. This is about posterity and history. Because the other thing that I thought was so gross about that approach to like how they scheduled it is there's also the angle that like when you're setting up a tournament in that way, you could obviously fill all the time when there's an extra half an hour with all the awesome shoulder content that you made for your YouTube channel. That's where you play the profile. That's where you play a segment. That's where you can maybe even say to the analyst, you want to come on the desk for 10 minutes and set up some narratives with extra time before the final. You know what I mean? You could do all sorts of cool shit.
Yeah, that could have been it. But instead, again, it comes down to the shoulder content. It comes down to, again, if you just want to be cynical about saying, okay, the match is all that matters and we just need to keep matches rolling so that we keep viewership in. And again, I mean, trade-off, right? Also, it costs, like the other side of it could be a financial side of it, though, is that every hour that the broadcast keeps going, that security, electricity, power costs. It's just cost. And so maybe even from that sort of point of view, where Blast, again,
put a penny in the meter, keep it running, have one on me. This is fucking garbage, mate. You can't run a major. At the end, it was all just about the money.
Yes,
then don't give them a major again. Don't give them a major.
It is. I mean, that would be the argument. But I think that it is, dude, because it's not like Blast are rolling in cash, right? They're clawing.
Yeah, shout out Frankie and Moses and fucking all those people who helped fuck Blast out of that sponsor. I can say that because I said I wouldn't work with them and then turned down millions of dollars from the Saudis. So I can say that. You guys can't, by the way. It's just shite if you say it. I've actually put my money where my mouth is. Literally. It's still over in Saudi Arabia, mate, being used to pay Frankie to work for people who would kill her friends, apparently. See how that connected? Never ends, mate. Never ends.
Never ends. It just keeps going.
Of course.
But I mean, that has got to be... If I could think of the strongest argument for a rolling schedule, that would be it. Is just shorter days because then costs go down. And if you're Blast at this point, and consider if everything is if they are figuring out how to get as much as possible subsidized, right? Travel and player stuff paid for by Valve, venue paid for by the city of Paris. Like they're trying to find every way to min-max and squeeze every bit of profit out of this as possible. That may very well be a big one, which is, all right, rolling schedule and get the days done as fast as possible to cut down on costs so that we have just that little bit more profit at the end of the day. I could see that. I could see that being a thing for Blast. I mean, considering that they're just fighting tooth and nail to stay alive right now, I could definitely see them being in a position like that to think along those lines. It's just something to consider. Not saying that is exactly the case, but it seems like it would be an argument for it, or could be an argument for it.
Yeah, but here's the problem if you do that. You might even be right financially, but in terms of opinion, I don't have to consider how much it costs. So the opinion now is worst major ever. So there you go. That's what you got for saving money. You did the worst major ever. Well done.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, it takes skill to do the worst major ever. There was majors before with tech problems all the time. The game broke, the PCs were shit. You ran the worst major ever at the very end with all the millions of dollars. That does take a type of talent. You're incredibly talented at being shit, much like Jake Lucky. Right, obviously, this is the last ever episode of Revenge of By the Numbers. So don't submit questions for future ones, because spoiler, I mean, submit them to your recycle bin if you want. I guess like those fucking error reports on Microsoft. If you ever click that, you're a fucking absolute pleb peon. Like when you click that, that's like the little kid with the like fake steering wheel next to daddy's one. Like, I'm driving too. Beep beep. It's like, are you though? You're the one playing fucking. You're playing like fucking Tails on Sonic, and there's no controller plugged in, homie. I'm just playing Sonic. But basically, you can still use the Discord subscription to support LFN though, and we do have other shows, and we will have future shows that are about Counter-Strike 2 with different people. So basically, if you want to support us, go onto the Last Free Nation Discord, subscribe there, and there will be other shows in the future that you can ask questions for, just not yet, and it gives us the best rev share. Thanks.
There you go. So first question, Snake Gold. Can you explain for a newcomer why the skin market for CS weapons is becoming so profitable? Is it a good, bad thing?
I mean, doesn't every market work on supply and demand? So if enough people really want certain skins, then there are only a limited amount of them, especially older ones, and therefore they get more and more and more and more valuable. And I'd also say in Counter-Strike, people are willing to sell. So the last thing I would say on that one is, I would assume, even though we're going to still have the skins in CS2, although they look a little bit different, I noticed, I would assume people just have that whole vibe of like, it's the end of CSGO, and so everyone's going mad on like speculation on the fucking stickers. I would assume that's part of it, if I had to guess.
I think that has to be.
I'm not an expert about skins personally.
No, I mean the way that I see skins are just NFTs, and so it's just
original ones, basically.
Original concept for NFTs, and so people just invest into them because, like you say, they're limited. Especially when you take old stickers, you know, from like Katowice. I mean, the ones that people go crazy about, Katowice 2014, that sort of stuff, like I Buy Power stickers or whatever. I mean, like you say,
there is one capsule
rare.
that has, I think the Katowice ones in that was 50 cents at the time you bought it, Semmler. And someone said if you'd bought like 2,000, you'd have like $500,000 now. But like something insane like that, like some Bitcoin level shit. Yeah, basically.
No, it is that, and it's and also, I mean, we are getting into like that digital currency thing where people are fucking around the same way that they're fucking around with crypto and all of that. And it's about speculation. And can you when there's a lot of speculation, then I just see it that way, where it's just, you have a lot of people out there taking risks. It's a place for them to park their money, and also just select.
Here's the actual joke. This is just a joke. Keep your knickers on in a twist. If you actually went back in time now when you were dazed and swag, you go back to that fateful day, like August 19th, 2014 or whatever, when you played I Bad Power against Netcode Guides. You go back to then. You don't tell Skadoodle up. You don't say, let's not throw the game. The joke is you go, guys, are you about to throw the game? Yeah. Whoa. Are you me for the future? Are you about to warn me not to throw the game? No. Throw the game. But just in the next 5 months, buy all of the stickers that you guys had from Katowice 2014, the I Buy Power stickers. Buy as many as you can. And the joke is, even when you get banned, because you need to get banned, just trust me on this one, especially you, Skadoodle, it's really going to work out for you. Am I crying or are you crying? Anyway, don't worry about that. That'll become relevant later. Basically, buy all those stickers and just hold. Just hodl. You don't know what hodl is yet, but hodl. And basically, at the end, the joke is those stickers will be worth way more than the fucking match skins that you got, like the 17 grand each or whatever. Like, you'll actually have millions of dollars at that point in time. You'll be laughing.
So are you telling me to do Copenhagen Flames? You know, like the Copenhagen Flames homies who are out there, you know, they figure out, oh, wait, hold on, our company's about to go under.
It's actually, if people don't know, it is not only immoral, it's probably illegal to do that. It's just that you won't be investigated by the police because they don't really give a fuck, basically.
And again, I think that's why stickers and skins and all that are so popular. It's because, you know, it's a kind of like a gray area. You know, what are you doing? It's like you're buying pixels online. You're using real money to do it on weird websites. It's this weird gray area where shit can happen, and so that's a big reason why I think they've taken off in the way that they have. And Blast aren't going to complain. I mean, they're printing money, so as far as they're concerned, they're like, yes, please do continue to speculate. Go for it. They only do something when their arm gets twisted so far back they can scratch their own nose backwards, right? All right, Lord Forrest. There are plenty of people in esports who did everything wrong, failed upwards, and think they're a genius who knows the secret to success in the industry. What is one of the worst pieces of genuine advice you have been given? By genuine, I mean that person actually thought they were giving you true wisdom without realizing how shit it was. Does not have to be esports related.
I can give you a good one. When I used to work for On Gamers and I had like real people who'd worked in like media and production and things like that, they would always tell me, like, keep the show length to 1 hour because people don't want to watch more than 1 hour. And also don't veer off topics and do like tangents. You got to keep the topic list strict. Like every 10 minutes, it's a new topic. I disregarded all of that and became probably the most legendary host of fucking podcasts ever in esports by doing it all the opposite way. But the thing is, that was real thinking from television and radio and things, but it just didn't apply to the digital medium. And spoiler, obviously stuff like Joe Rogan also showed that that isn't the way you do it. People just want an interesting convo. You must have some in casting where they told you some proper shite. Come on.
No, that's the thing, because I only ever took advice from James. So I mean, like, and
well, then he told
mentor.
you like mainly make fun of the home nationality and reference all like it's things that are banned there. Wasn't that bad advice?
No, that he kept that one to himself, thankfully.
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
No, that's what I'm trying to dig through my memory, but I'm pretty fortunate, I guess, in that the people that I actually took advice from, because that was the difference.
What about that advice where Richard told you, Semmler, trust me, you got to get in on this E-League thing. ESL, it's a thing of the past, mate. In about 10 years, we'll all be doing E-League.
We all bought that one, dude. That wasn't even.
I don't know if Richard really said that, but it's a good joke. Whatever, it's great. It's a good.
That is still just as far as I'm concerned, E-League is still just peak. That was.
Oh,
those
it was
were
mega.
the golden days.
It's just the fact they rug pulled us after 1 year.
I know. It was just the way that all that panned out. But the E-League, man, dude, that was so much fun to work that fucking event. No, genuine advice. Haven't really taken any, and I was very careful with who my mentors were, and so when they gave advice, it was from people who actually did shit, not all of the randos that you run into at parties or whatever. Basically, that was it. It's like if somebody told me something, some random person, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's nice, okay, cool. If James is telling me that, it's like, okay, yeah, no, I'm listening with both ears. It's just there's a big difference, and they haven't led me wrong. All right, B Tannen. How do you tell the difference between a CSGO player losing engagements because of mistakes and because their opponent is just better?
Well, I find it so crazy, these questions, because doesn't the answer just come down to like, you see it with your eyes and your brain interprets it? Like, this is one reason I really look down, Semmler, on the analysts who hype the narrative that like these underdog teams are just better than the low tier 1 teams. Because if you watch the games, the people like Ents are shitting the bed in the game. FaZe had some of the worst CT setups you'll see ever on Inferno. That used to be a great map for them. People like Liquid played shit against Apex. Your eyes can tell you they're not. Have you never seen a great match where both people are doing awesome? Have you never seen it? Essentially, here's the question, Semmler. How do you tell the difference between a UFC fight that's contender for fight of the year and it's a championship bout and a championship bout where someone wins on decision and it's a bad fight? Your eyes tell you. Does he ever land any shots? Are there any techniques being displayed? Do people actually like react appropriately and do the right thing? You just know by being an expert. There's no simple way to do it, I'm afraid. Like if you can't do it, you can't do it. If you can't see, you can't see. I don't really get the question. Like the reason why, for example, I know that like Into the Breach was doing awesome in that game against Vitality is because there's players on Vitality that were fragging and they were just getting straight up out fragged. But like people like Spinks would lose as a CT rifle against like a rushing AK. That won't happen on a normal game. They were just getting their head popped.
Mm. I mean, that's the one that the example you're giving there makes me think of Into the Breach. That was the big one. That it's like they were better because their strategy was better. Like they're better because of intangibles, i.e., they had no fear this tournament. They had nothing to lose, and they just swarmed them. They zerged them the entire time. So is it better because it worked? I mean, in a sense, yes, because they played without fear. If their opponents hadn't played with fear, if their opponents hadn't played without fear, they would have been losing. But because they didn't, they really got into that mindset of not having anything to lose and just going all out, right? Well, all of a sudden they're winning matches and they're going way deep into a tournament they had no business going deep in. So I mean, does that make their because of mistakes? I mean, no, can't really see it. I mean, you're like you say, it's the eye test really, and it's just also thousands of hours of watching CSGO. You're just gonna know.
That's also the part I do also forget even myself is I've watched 22 years of Counter-Strike. Yeah, that's why it's hilarious. People tell me I don't know. I'm not just bad. I know nothing. I have watched more than all of you. Essentially, by the way, I'll never do it, but there's even like a mad ableist angle on there that essentially I'm the only person in the world who can't learn ever. Bit fucked up, isn't it? Just gonna say that.
All right, Kovora. I really like the fear is the mind killer passage from Dune, and I use it from time to time. Are there any good washing verse style passages from other books?
I don't actually know what a washing verse is.
Yeah, I don't know either. Actually, I kind of want to look that up. No. Okay.
I'm not someone who memorizes like passages from books. I like the story and the way that. So I can't answer this. I'm not a person who has like poetry to hand and shit.
Okay. I think he just means memorable because like the idea behind the Washing verse is centered around the concept of fear. This idea is explained in the legends about something in sagas and skaldic poetry. I think it's more just memorable lines that that you would be thinking about. I don't know. I mean, I had a quote.
I mean, Dune's full of loads. Like one of the best things about the Dune series is those fake quotes that are at the beginning of each of the paragraphs that are like historical, or they're like about someone who's like writing a diary entry or something. Those are fucking mega, but can't remember them off by heart, obviously.
It's not like you're going to sit there and just memorize those. I mean, I did come across.
And there's too many. They just sort of they actually do wash over you in some sense. There's too many of them in there. There's too many to remember.
There was one quote. I'll just leave with a quote. I was in darkness, but I took 3 steps and found myself in paradise. The first step was a good thought, the second a good word, and the third a good deed. And that was Nietzsche. There you go. There's your quote. What are your top 5? Divorce Lives in Lucky Shadow. What are your top 5 period drama film series set in Europe? Top 5 period drama films.
Technically, Excalibur should instantly be there, surely.
Yes.
That's in England.
Yes.
Excalibur. There's
Excalibur
one.
is just amazing, and especially
Gladiator.
Just the soundtrack. Yeah, Gladiator, Excalibur, Gladiator. I mean, parts. No, it doesn't really take place in Europe, does it? I would say Master and Commander, but that's more of. I guess if you want to consider the ship as a part of England, that's moving towards South America. There we'll put it that way.
I've got an underrated one for you. The first feature film that Ridley Scott made was a film called The Duelists, and it's about 2 French noblemen who were like military people, and they're having all these duels, and it's just mega. It's set in that time period of like the post-Napoleonic Wars or something. So there's one for you. It's a pretty good one.
There's another one that I rewatched recently, and I didn't outright hate, but it was Troy.
There's the thing. People don't like that because obviously, like, some parts are a bit cheesy, but the story's good. Some of the acting's good.
Gods and all that.
It's got a good story. Yeah, I thought it was a good film.
But I mean, it's still an epic movie and it's still an epic film. I think they did a good job with that one too. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed rewatching it recently, so you can take that for what you want. Off the top of my head, we talked about this recently, and I think one of the actors just passed away as well. But the HBO series Rome, also a banger. We talked about this because I guess they got the rug pulled out from under them. They had to kind of tie up. They had to end the series really quickly, so they didn't really get to do it do it justice at the end. But the first couple seasons of that series are freaking amazing.
Sure.
So that's worthwhile.
And since he just says essentially it has to be a period piece, one of my favorite films is a film called A Man for All Seasons, based on a play, which is about like Thomas More and fucking King Henry VIII. It's just an amazing film. It's from the 70s. Just watch that. It's banger.
Who that sounds really familiar. Who do you know who directed that off the top of your head?
I don't know who directed it, but the guy who was like the main guy is a guy called Paul Scofield. It's not a famous person. He's from he's a stage actor.
Perhaps you mentioned that at another point. Okay, I'll check that out. See, I'm taking notes too, guys.
I mean, watch that Duelist one. 100% you'll love it, so it's mega. It's all about the idea of honor and what it means, and like the relationship between men and antagonism and stuff. Oh, it's amazing.
Oh, I'll check that out.
I actually did a whole video on my side channel about it, believe it or not. Yeah, that's right. Side channel. I have fucking a main channel, Twitter, I post a billion times on. Do all these shows, do events, fucking International Man of Mystery, and I swag out with a side channel. Y'all just tweeting. Y'all just tweeting.
Exactly. All right. Nixon, would making best of ones MR20 or perhaps higher improve their quality?
Why not just play a best of 3 at that point in time? You know what I mean? What are we doing at this point?
Also, when literally one map lasts over an hour on average now, it's just going to take.
It's actually not. Here's the thing: in the modern day, like you're saying, it's not the BO1 like the rounds that matter. The essential thing people still don't understand is the reason why a worse team wins BO1s more often isn't even that they only have to win one map. It's that the veto means you cannot be forced to play your 2 worst maps. If you want every single time, you could veto your 3 worst maps. That means even the worst team in the tournament could play their 4th best map, Semmler. That means you're just going to get way more upsets. In a best of 3, let's say you veto your 7th best map. I pick your 6th best map as the favorite. Thank you. I win that match. You know what I mean? Like, it's actually the veto that ruins the BO1s. It's not even just the BO1 number of rounds.
Mm-hmm. All right. Franny boy, in your opinion, what series in CS history had the most intensive back and forth between the competing IGLs? Ooh, off the top of your head?
I mean, the one that I always used to say was the best series ever. I don't know if I still would. The Fnatic versus Nip one at the MLGX Games Aspen, that was really good. It's back and forth series. In terms of IGLs, though, that's the key thing. The IGL.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm kind of getting hung
I'll
up
give
on
you
that as
one.
well.
I actually thought that one where Carrigan's Mouse beat Astralis at that like Pro League at the end of 2019 was amazing, because it was like all the maps were close. It was back and forth. The crowd was cheating for Astralis. Like, it was a fucking banger series, mate.
You say that one again real quick?
Mouse versus Astralis, semi-finals of ESL Pro League Season 10 at the end of 2019 in Odense, Denmark. I do this for a fucking living. That's not Liquipedia.
There you go.
I know about you, dense. You're just dense. People at home. Whatever. There you go. There's the joke.
He's just dense. Had the most intensive back and forth between the competing IGLs. Yeah, that's one of them. I mean, if just just in terms of close matches, I'm not going to go into too deep, but like just in terms of close matches, actually, just to repeat one that we were talking about earlier today and that I thought was amazing was the FaZe Na'Vi one. Because everybody was sweating bullets in that match. You could tell it went all the way to the limit. So if you want recent CS to go watch, just watch that. I mean, if I was going to rewatch one series from the tournament, it might be that one. Then it was so good. So there you go. All right,
I'll give you a more recent one. I actually thought the Blast Fall final between Heroic and FaZe was a banger last year, where it just like went all the way to the third map. Cadian and Kerrigan just called an awesome game. There's a good one.
Mm-hmm. All right, Son of Harry 4. In the history of competitive CSGO, what is your favorite best of 3 or best of 5 that stands out? Kind of the similar question.
That's that. Like for example, the last Cologne final was mega. There's a best of 5 for you.
Yeah,
we answered a bunch of the best of 3s. Yeah, E-League Atlanta final, Virtus Pro versus
Atlanta.
Astralis. There's a great one.
Yeah, that was a banger. That was, and Kirby still there. Crazy. All right, Santiago La Farga. With CSGO coming to its end, who do you think will be the best player in CS2 and why? Does Simple have more GOAT years left in the tank? Will Zywoo, Shiro, Nico, or Monesi take the crown to become the CS GOAT? Will new talent rise up in the new game? I mean, considering we spent as much time talking about IM earlier, I mean, considering what an insane performance that was from him, I mean, all eyes are going to be on him to see if he can continue producing those kinds of results or if this was a one-off. I mean, he would be, at the tip of the, with a performance like that, you would think that he would be a contender to keep an eye on going forward. But again, you're changing how the game feels. You're changing how the game moves. You're changing, like, we've seen players get completely wrecked just by making a change to a gun, like Kenny or JW. And it took years, for JW to come back anywhere near the level that he was. And even then he wasn't the same. And Kenny never was the same again, almost. I mean, the level of dominance that we had from Kenny, and that was just changing a gun. So, I mean, when you're going to change the entire, how the game feels and moves, the movement, the shooting, all of that, some players are just going to drop off a cliff. It's almost impossible to predict. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's possible to predict who's going to be able to?
I mean, you can't know what will be different about the game, but in terms of people whose form are good, people like Nico, Simple, Zywoo, Device, they just historically have incredible raw consistency and ability to consistently be very good. The only thing I would say is, before people like write off Simple, I'm not going to write Simple off until the day he can actually go home to his country and play from his home country again. Until that, there has to always be an asterisk next to all these results and performances. Not for the opponent. The opponent can only play who they play. But for Simple and Na'Vi, I have to have that, because everyone else has that except the other Ukrainians. So I think it's just that angle is so unfair. Now, for people like Nico, I think it was just a bad major. To me, the obvious people you should predict to be good are the ones who are like almost near the top now. Rops, Keserato, Shiro, Spinks, Axile. These guys are the bangers now. These guys look really good, so why wouldn't they just be good if they can adapt to the next game?
What's going to be really interesting with this, when you really have a radical shift like this, is you could very well have some guys that just come blazing out of nowhere because they see this as their golden opportunity to put 12 hours a day in and just rise up. That is an opportunity for them that is very real. So if anything, we're going to see somebody coming out of left field that we just haven't seen before, and like an IM or somebody like that is just going to come out and just have a crazy performance and be able to really adapt to the game well. That'll be interesting to see as well. We'll have to keep an eye on it. Okay, architect of Korean esports based Joe. Does Overwatch have a higher skill ceiling than CS:GO?
It's an interesting question. Because I will say, what people don't know is teamwork in Counter-Strike to me is usually more about like communication. It's not as much like, yeah, you do the flashbangs and stuff. It's not really, it's like the only way you really interact physically is more stuff like do a crossfire or like you watch this while I watch that. But like I said, for me, a lot of it's comms. I actually will say, if people don't know, people laugh at Overwatch. To play, it is a really hard game. Like the way that you interact the different like roles together is more like League of Legends, like where you like combo things together and stuff. Like the way that like the Jonak fucking character would work with like Azaria would work with the Widow, but it used to be the Tracer or whatever. Like the actual levels of skill like the Korean teams could do was really fucking impressive. You remember that, Semmler? Like some of those Tracers, like Prophets, were fucking godlike, mate. And then they'd have the tank that would come in, like Gesture or whatever. Like there were some really cool. Like I actually think it's a mad underrated game in terms of skill. I would agree.
I mean, you need to have, not only do you need to have raw mechanical aim, but you also need to be able to handle the coordination of being able to handle abilities. You need the calm. You can't just ping things the way that you can in League of Legends, for example, or whatever. Like you actually have to try and calm and make yourself clear. You have to have protocols. Okay, how does like what do we, if then scenarios, right? We have these ults that are going. We have these ults that aren't. Like what do we do in this sort of scenario? Like you have to plan all that sort of thing out as well as know all the maps. You have to be able to play all the maps to a decent level. I mean, there's definitely now whether it has a higher skill ceiling than CS:GO.
But it's sweet. It's not impossible. Like, for example, as Semmler's saying, it also has every type of firing style. CS largely just has hit scan.
It's close to Quake.
It shoots and it instantly goes there. You have rocket launchers, like the fucking what was the character that did the rocket launcher?
Yeah.
What was the character that did the rocket launcher?
Oh, Farah.
That's like Quake rocket launcher. Then you have like the Zarias, almost like the Unreal Tournament thing where you do the shock blast, where you shoot that thing out. Well, then you have like fucking Widowmaker is a sniper rifle. Then you have Tracer is like pistols but up close. Then you have Genji is like a melee weapon. So actually, then there's an archer character. Like actually the types of firing, it's actually potentially even more diverse than Quake.
Yeah, in a sense. I mean, you have, that's what's cool about it, is that you have all of that. So you're not feeling one day. It's not like you're kind of stuck there. You can change up if you need to. So no, I mean, there's definitely I'd be willing to entertain that conversation. I don't think that you can just blow Overwatch off completely. Even though initially the reaction is to say lol.
I think it's a meme. Yeah, of course.
It is a meme. But if you were to really sit down and think about it, I mean, Overwatch, Quake is no joke, and Overwatch is probably pretty close to Quake in terms of the level of skill that you need. All right, Artisan, what are your top 3 issues broadcast talent have to deal with that us regular plebs fail to empathize with? For example, being away from home for most of the year. That was probably the hardest, especially when you have family and friends at home. Being away for months at a time, that was definitely one of the harder ones. Like for example, when I was working Overwatch League, I mean, I basically lived remote in LA for 8 months out of the year. So, and that spread out, and I would travel home every now and again, but like, it was like 6 or 7 months, 7 or 8 months, something like that. I can't remember exactly how long, but it was a big chunk of the year where I was just gone away from home. And so that was probably one of the harder parts for me is the travel, being away, as events got longer and longer, and it became more about leagues and not just standalone events, where it's like, standalone events, once upon a time you'd be gone for like 3 or 4 days. The event would last 2 or 3 days, and then you've got the travel days, but you're home again for maybe like 1 or 2 days, and so you're still seeing each other. But like when you have a significant other and you're gone for like months at a time, that it does get challenging. It does get difficult. So that was probably definitely one of the bigger ones, was the travel.
I mean, there's a whole bunch for me. Like sleep. Most people get terrible sleep at events because you're in a different time zone, or you go staying up late, or you're on your phone, or you've had a drink. Like, people tend to get very little sleep. People don't get it. The best analysts can just operate off 3-4 hours, mate. You wouldn't notice. You'll never know on an event if I didn't get any sleep. Then there's the fact that you don't get time off. Like sometimes at the event you have time off, but you have to keep an eye on the game, or you have time off, but you're talking to people. And you never get time to yourself, or like proper isolation, which you need. I think you need like to decompress as a human. There's the fact that the days used to be insanely long. I used to do every match. I've worked like 15-hour day after 15-hour day after 15-hour day with bad sleep, into like bad food, into I'd only just arrived the day before with no day off and no media day. Like, people have no clue. And that's why when people go, oh, boo-hoo, you talk about video games. You're just a moron if you think that. By that logic, by the way, you must think it's not hard to be a lawyer or an accountant because all you do is look up documents and scribble down numbers on a piece of paper. It must just not be that hard. It's your fucking brain, you moron. Your brain can be more exhausted than your body can by physical labor if you use mental power. So I think people massively underestimate how much to be on all the time drains the fuck out of you. It just drains your energy. You feel like your life force is going.
Well, because you are, I mean, you're having to be creative for hours and hours and hours and hours a day. Perhaps the food isn't great. Perhaps you're not getting good sleep. Perhaps you're drinking too much because again, we never drank as much as when we were constantly living out of hotels because you don't have anything else to do. I mean,
exactly.
This was before. Now it's like if you're if you're somewhere for a long period of time, they're setting up PCs for you in your hotel room. You're probably, you probably got a hotel room to go to that has PCs or something like that. Like you have options. Back then it was, your options were, either just just sit in your room all event long and read a book, or you're going down to the hotel bar to shoot the shit with whichever players or casters or whoever was hanging out. And so, you take that into account as well, where it's like you're constantly just eating shit food, drinking, maybe not getting the best sleep, having long days. It starts stacking up on you at the end of it, whether you think it will or not. That's 100% a real thing.
I've got a good one. Until something like the latter part of 2015, you didn't even get your own hotel room. Like I've just been put in hotel rooms with people. I didn't have a choice that I just don't even know. Sometimes not even working the event. They're like there as a journalist or like in some other that's fucking mental. Like, do you know what it's like to be trying to get like the 4.5 hours sleep and then your dickhead roommate who's doing something else comes stumbling in at 2:30 in the morning all pissed drunk, taking half an hour in the bathroom because they're all moving around and then comes through and then
we've heard some real horror stories there.
And then you wake up after 2 hours and then some dickhead on Reddit, he thinks Khan's still in Fnatic because you say the wrong name by accident in like a brain fart, fucking mental in it.
It definitely heard some horror stories there. The sharing rooms. Not to be repeated. Weakest. Is it too much to hope that in CS2 Valve finally have a decent format qualification process for the majors? Do you think they will ever have more of a hand in the hiring of talent? Or is that just a fool's hope? Thanks, lads. No, I don't think that they will have more of a hand in. I think Blast have clearly demonstrated that the way that the majors are handled now is very much as a TO sees it as their tournament. It doesn't look like Valve have any say at all in how talents are hired. Because
you wouldn't want them to, bro.
The decisions that Blast made here make it seem like it's very much Blast who are in control of that aspect, at least.
If you know how Dota 2 works, it's a fucking nightmare that Valve has any say in who works as the talent. And also, if you know what the Valve accounts are like now, the joke is the talent would be Smooya, Oni Pixel, and fucking like some arsehole, other famous influencer type guy. They'd be garbage, mate. They wouldn't hire the good. They'd have 3 Kicks Philip doing the fucking major. It'd be fucking trash, mate. They don't know Yanko Maniac, really. They've probably heard of him a little bit or seen him at an event. Like, they don't even seem to mind they were here, so I think it'd be terrible to do that. Mm-hmm. And no, I don't think there's any hope for the format, because look how many shit majors we've had with this format and the Swiss system, etc. Like, they don't care, mate. They don't care.
Okay, ELT, similar to the Astralis Liquid dynamic during Liquid's Grand Slam run, where a lot of Liquid's success came from not having to face Astralis, who were the best teams to have their success seemingly dependent on the situation of the era-defining greats?
I mean, I just fundamentally disagree with the initial premise. Like, the notion is that the reason Liquid was on top is because Astralis didn't face them. No, it's because Astralis wasn't practicing and trying to be a really top team. They beat Astralis the one time they played them during like the span when they were on the Grand Slam run. They just beat them. So what do you want? Like, essentially, the same people who tell me, but you can only beat who's in front of you. Right, Liquid beat basically a better record than almost any team in history of teams in front of them. Yeah, but the other team, if they had have practiced, would have met you and beat you. Okay, and yeah, if my fucking auntie had wheels, she'd be a bike. The fuck are you talking about? Doesn't even make sense, does it? The other one he means is like, because they never faced each other. Well, the classic one basically is LDLC/Envious, the one where they didn't have Kenny S, where they still had Smiths and Shocks. Famously, they never beat Fnatic on LAN. They didn't even in the Olaf boost game. So if they'd have beat them if they'd have played them in like every fucking semi or whatever, or Astralis or Fnatic had attended tournaments like Star Series and Gfinity, they probably wouldn't have won those tournaments. I can't know, but that would be the speculation because they never beat them. So there's
Banger.
one. That's about it. Yeah,
banger.
no, that's good enough.
All right, Asada, where does Kenny S and Guardian rank all time for Oppers in CS:GO?
I mean, for AWPers, top 5 immediately, probably like top 3 or 4. The real problem with the AWPer one is this, and it's a big discussion you have to have, is I think in the modern day, AWPer doesn't mean gets kills with the AWP. I think what it means is that plays the sniper role, and as a result, like it's a long distance type of fighting information. So here's my problem. I don't think Brokey and Simple really are AWPers. They use the AWP to get kills, but the way they do it is like they do combat AWP and they go close range and they're about peeking a small angle. People like Device, people like fucking Jame, Guardian, Kenny, they're doing traditional AWPing. So in a way, if we're doing traditional AWPing, they're easily top 3 or 4. If we're doing all AWPers ever, they're at least top 10 and they're probably both top 5, if I had to guess. That would be my take.
Yeah, I mean, it's just if you just left wondering what would happen if they hadn't nerfed the op when they did, and what kind of heights Kenny S could have reached if he could have kept going at that rate.
Might have been the best Counter-Strike player ever.
Yeah, he was. I mean, okay. So the next question is about Olafmeister, but that always comes to mind when I think about Kenny S. Is that Olafmeister was literally just like, yeah, no, nobody wants to go on that A side on Inferno because that's where Kenny is, and he scares us. It's like you're talking about one of the peak players, and like he had that kind of influence on his opponents where they were terrified of wherever he could be. Like, where would he be on the map? Because if you ran into Kenny, you died. So it's just, yeah, he was at such a high level. Absolutely top 5. Guardian as well was just such a freak. Both of those guys were just so much fun to watch and cast. All right, exactly. What made Olafmeister such a great player in 2015? Was it game sense, aim, or other factors? Why did he fall off so hard?
You know what's beautiful? You can look it up. I wrote an article. It was called The Measure of the Master, Olaf M. And it was a long text article about everything he was amazed at in 2015, like how he fit into the team, how he made maps like Cobblestone and Train Work on the T side that they weren't even that good on in Fnatic, what they would do, like on CT side, the sites he would play with Crims, them in post-plant scenarios, working in 2v4s. Essentially, he was just one of the most well-rounded players ever. Had an amazing AWP as well, by the way. He was a hybrid player. He was just great in every area of the game, pistols, deagle. He was a clutch player. He was good in finals. He was a big match player. Everything. For real, it's a bit like Cold Zero when they were at their peak. I mean, he was more skilled. They just looked good at everything. They just looked like they couldn't lose games.
I just, the one clip that I always think of with Olafmeister is just him whipping around corners with a Tech 9 and just blasting, just taking out everybody as if he had a rifle. And you're just like, like, you don't see anybody else doing that. So how is Olaf just so fucking good with that pistol? He was always a threat. And so it just boosted these anti-eco rounds where you're thinking, okay, this round should be a write-off. And, this was also during like the LDCZ era and all that where the pistols were strong. But I mean, you still had guys like Olafmeister was a step above somehow. And so Fnatic just won these rounds that they had it set them apart in a way that was really hard to replicate for other teams. But that was also like, that's what was so fun about that Fnatic as well, because not only did you have Olafmeister, but they were like a hive mind. Like every clutch situation, you never saw them talk. There was hardly any comms. But if there were 3 of them alive post plant, Fnatic were winning that round because they just knew where to play one with the other, always supporting one another. Their post plants were just murder. So it's such a fun team to watch. Probably just gonna go back and start watching some VODs again, for crying out loud. Might as well. All right, Verum. How will the transition from CSGO to CS2 go from the TO perspective? Do you think there will be any large S-tier events this year in CS2, such as Pro League or IEM
Basically
Fall?
answered this earlier.
Or will 2023 be all CSGO and 2024 be all CS2?
I get the vibe it might all just be one CSGO, but we'll see.
Pardon me?
I think it will just be all CSGO, but we'll see.
Yeah, that 2023 will be all CSGO, and that 2024 will be the big unveil, like the big launch for CS2. I mean, if it's true that the beta isn't coming until the fall of this year, then yeah, you have to think that they're going to be stress testing. They're going to be running all sorts of stuff. That's going to give them the fall and winter to fix anything. And then if the spring rolls around with the next major, well, then there you go. You have CS2, the next major, everything comes together, and then you roll with that. Would make sense. Vigiman, what's the strangest haircut y'all have had? A mohawk. Not that that's strange, I guess. I don't know, but mohawk back when I was like 17.
By their logic, the haircut I had recently, like a Zuma cut or whatever, it's just a fucking haircut, mate. I don't get that.
The haircut.
Just a haircut in it.
All right, Richard Hag, do you think the timing of the current major was good? Were you surprised at the form of teams given everyone had recent experience from the RMRs? I mean, it was loads of surprises in terms of the form of certain teams. You absolutely expected certain teams to do better than they did, and then obviously you had teams like Gamer Legion and Apex and Into the Breach, and you just had wild. Of course, you could not be surprised when you saw how some of these matches went. And do you think the timing of the current major was good?
I think what he means is like maybe the Richard angle of like a lot of the top teams looked a bit shaky. Like FaZe and Na'Vi obviously didn't look great coming in. Like Heroic hasn't won in a bloody million years. Like there's a few reasons why. I don't know. The problem with that is you can't really do it like that. Like the whole point of majors is they just happen when they happen and you just hope you're in good form. Like spoiler, a million TIs happened at just the wrong time for the best team of the year. That happened a bunch of times in Dota.
I mean, it's just to repeat the tired point that if we could just schedule the major to happen before the player break.
Yeah, sure.
You can have the major and then the player break, and there you go. There's no IEM Dallas. There's no, we're not going to be waiting on other tournaments that are just going to be completely underwhelming because we just went through the major. It would be so nice if we could just have the major before the break, and there you go. But unfortunately, we don't live in that world. All right, Casper, was Sean Gares the best IGL in North America? What was so special about him? Hard to say though, because Days got his career was cut short. That's the problem.
There were different styles of IGL. Like Days' style was more sort of like simple CS, but if he had good players, he could sort of like frag out. Sean Gares was more like the traditional IGL. But then again, here's the flaw. Days was a bit of an arsehole. Sean Gares was a bit too much of a pussycat sometimes. So I actually also felt like you almost wanted to merge the two. The thing about Sean Gares basically was he did actually put in like time to like know the European meta, study the demos, know the tactics and stuff. So I think he could just call, and he was a pretty good caller too. Dazed is underrated because he was a good fragger. But yeah, here's the thing. Sean Gares is overrated. You have to understand, guys. Like, there's a reason why he didn't have that many deep major runs and stuff. He had some good players, but he was a good IGL, certainly. He was good.
I mean, if you talk to any of the players that played with him, I mean, some of them would literally run through a wall for him, or, he understood like the fundamentals of Counter-Strike and how to get players to buy into that model. Now, whether or not he could have used a better entry fragger, I mean, it's like at that point, you're going to have roles where, obviously if he has more or less, he's got more to work with. But I think he is the best at IGL and NA just because we lost Dazed. And what can you do after that, really? There's no comparison past that point. All right, weakest. What makes a superstar? As opponent to just a star player, whether that's in esports or
I'm almost certain we had a question like this on the last one where I explained it, like the difference between like the star like Stoud and then the superstar can be a star even against the stars or something, and that also the superstar can take over the game. I'm pretty sure we answered this on past one unless I'm wrong.
Well, he literally says, apologies if this has been asked before.
I think it has. All
right, it's go. Favorite UK bands?
The problem with that is, without sounding arrogant, because I am, all of them, isn't it? Just like fucking, the joke is, even rock and roll towards the fucking British bands, Led Zeppelin, Oasis. I'm not going to say the Beatles, I think they were shit. Not even a Rolling Stones fan, really. Pink Floyd. There's loads, but there was loads of like fucking post rock and prog rock and shit like that. I'm a big fan of like Porcupine Tree. Who else? Fucking hell. I'd have to open my folder. I'll have a look for a few if you want. You do some and I'll pick some out. Who you say?
Just thinking, because after that, then you start getting like favorite UK bands. Then you can get into artists.
Are we allowed to do artists? He probably means bands though, so whatever. I'll keep it to bands.
But I mean, bands would have been like what? Joy Division. That was always one that I listened to. Bunch.
Smiths.
The Smiths, yeah. I mean, there were so many. I mean, the obvious as well, like Sex Pistols and stuff like that back in the day. Favorite UK bands. Yeah. I mean, The Clash. I think you said that.
I didn't do that one, but you can do that too if you're a fan of punk music.
Well, that was the period that I went through where it was like I was listening to The Clash, the Sex Pistols, like those, like the mainstream punk. Went through a whole period there, 16, 17, 18, something like that.
I could do a whole bunch. I liked a band that was one of those like fucking shoegazer rock, like Slow Dive, My Bloody Valentine. If people know those bands, they're pretty classic. I like a band that has almost invented the post-rock genre called Talk Talk from the 1980s. The problem with this also is you have to also find out if the bands are all from the UK. Like some of them might have some guy from fucking Australia or something. Who else? Let me double check it. The problem is some of them will be American. I'm double checking actually. I'm trying to get
Yeah,
ones
that's
that
the tricky thing.
that actually are legit. The Verve, back in the day, they were pretty good. Radiohead, there's an obvious one. I think we've got loads there. Got quite a few there. Obviously, you could do loads that are like electronic music, etc. Aphex Twin, Boards of Canada. The thing is, people probably say they're artists instead of bands, though, right?
Yeah, that's a tricky
They don't really
thing.
play live, do they?
To like Scream, Benga. I mean, if you wanted to get into some dubstep, I mean, there was a lot of dubstep going on. In the UK
Massive
for a while
Attack.
there.
There's an obvious one. Fucking
Massive Attack, yeah.
Portishead. These are all bangers. Yeah, that'll do.
All right, Byzank. Will Thorin ever bring back the glorious mustache from his op discussions versus Lurpus, Semmler, and Pimp at Snipe Live DreamHack Masters Malmo 2017?
Definitely not. I mean, look, I might do it as a joke, but here's what's actually annoying about that.
This is a mustache.
I literally only did that because it was November and I was doing Movember to raise money for cancer awareness and research. Now, here's two parts to this story you won't know that are fucked up. And it's why we have a saying in England called no good deed goes unpunished. So one, when a dickhead wrote a hit piece about me in a mainstream games journalism vertical about how I'm a piece of shit and a racist and stuff, he purposely used not even a photo, a screenshot from a Thorin's Thoughts video with that mustache to make it look like I'm a weirdo or a pedo or something. So already, what a cunt. And then here's even the better one, Semmler. Even though when I did that Movember, I helped raise money. And in fact, people won't know this. There was like a little like crowdfunding thing. And Simple, are you ready for a piece of info you don't know, guys? Simple had won FPL for a month or something, and he just donated like $2,000 of it to my crowdfund because he was a fan of mine. And so my crowdfund got like $5,000 raised or something mental, right? You'd think if you raised $5,000, Semmler, the Movember company would be quite sort of happy. But because whoever they hired was either some mad feminist who must hate men or just didn't know who I am, the next years, you guys all kept doing it. They never contacted me ever again. So I won't be doing it for Movember, that's for sure. Movember can shove it up their arse. And while they're there, check out their prostate.
That's
not bad. There's always a zinger at the end. There's always a zinger at the end. Yeah. There's always a zinger.
I just always remember the I just always remember the Hawka mix of the Amazon thing. This is a mustache.
Exactly.
So good. All right. Well, that was our last question, my dude. And so that's going to be a show. Do you have anything to add before we call it off?
All good. We'll be back doing watch parties and stuff. You'll still see me and Semmler do content.
Yeah. We'll be doing watch parties. We'll be doing all of that, but that'll be the end of this podcast. And thanks everybody for the support, and thank you for the questions, of course. And thank you for supporting on Discord, subscribing there so that you could ask those questions. Also, that is the best place for rev share for us in terms of subscription model stuff, because you can subscribe on Twitch, you can subscribe on Discord. If you have the option, please choose Discord. It's just better revenue share for us. But yeah, we'll have more opportunities to interact in the future, everybody. And thanks very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for the support, all the warm comments that I've been getting. Really appreciated it. You guys are all ballers, badass. Thank you very much. And yeah, we'll be back for some watch parties in the future. So until then, see you next time.
Chris is still in the picture. Oh, I'm still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
Gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus! He does something!
Looking for a second, he connects in. Oh, and he gets a third as well.